start the live recordings?
Chairman, we are now live.
Excellent. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to the executive meeting on Thursday, the 21st of September. I'm Councillor Lee Dillon, the leader of West Berkshire Council, and we have opposition members in the chamber, and we have the leader of the opposition, Councillor McKinnon, joining us via Zoom. Welcome, Councillor McKinnon. So item 1 is apologies, please.
We have apologies from Councillor Adrian Abbs and Councillor Howard Williston, and Councillor Ian Cottingham is obviously joining us by Zoom tonight.
Excellent. So Councillor Cottingham on Zoom, but won't be able to vote on any decisions or propose, of course. Okay, item 2 is the minutes. Are there any questions on the minutes? Councillor Bowick.
Thank you, Leader. Just an observation in para 8, that's on page 8 in the second paragraph. I commended the work of officers in early years service. Not early years setting has a different connotation.
Thank you. We'll make that change. Any other comments on the minutes? No. So I'll propose those from the chair. Councillor Brooks, do you second those? Thank you. And exec members in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Okay, item 3 is declarations of interest. No, none received. Thank you. So item 4 is public questions. So thank you to members of the public that submitted questions for this evening's executive. Welcome to those of you in attendance in the room. For public, if you're in attendance to hear the answer to your question, you can ask a supplementary if you have one. For those public questioners unable to join this evening, I can confirm you'll get a written response. The question will appear on the screen and be answered by the relevant portfolio holder. You'll then get the opportunity to ask the supplementary, which is to clarify the response and not to introduce new business. We've ordered the questions if there's more than one in accordance with the Constitution. And we do have a time limit on public questions, but let's see how far we can get through that. And if we need to extend, we can consider that when we get to it. Just for information for everyone, Mr. Ian Hall has asked for his responses in writing. And then we have in attendance, Mr. Goatley, Mr. Pick, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Pearce, Mr. Marino. Welcome, Tom, are present here in the chamber. Do we know about Ms. Karim? No.
Sorry, Leader, she will receive written response as well because we haven't heard from her.
Excellent. Okay. And then I think we've got Mr. Story and Ms. Sanderson joining us via Zoom. So with that, can we move, please, to what we updated it. Where are we? It's Martin, isn't it? It's B. Okay. Oh, question A got removed. Sorry. Yeah. So question B is by Mr. Goatley, answered by Councillor Colston.
Okay, good evening, Ms. Goatley. Thank you very much for your question. The purpose of the 2021 Avison Young Environmental Appraisal Report was to examine the environmental issues on the site and identify what would need to be done if, as it was envisaged back in 2020, in the 2020 development brief, whole-scale redevelopment of the site was brought forward. But as confirmed in the executive report in June last year, the council is no longer considering a site-wide wholesale redevelopment. And as a result, the surface water drainage and flooding of individual plots will be assessed at the point of a planning application or when that planning application is submitted for redevelopment of each plot. Do you have a supplementary question based on the answer?
Sorry, Fred. So, but thank you for your answer.
Okay.
As somebody whose house was flooded last night, it's garden the second time since Cinch finished their tarmacking. Obviously, drainage is quite important to us. And I'm afraid that you can't meet legal requirements by doing it plot by plot. It's simple as that. You are flooding my garden illegally.
Do you have a question, Mr. Goatley? That's a statement.
So I'm saying, can you re-look at that? Even if the officers don't understand drainage, I do. So can you look at that and realise that you cannot do it plot by plot? It's as simple as that, because we would just have you in court.
Well, we have looked at it, and that's the position that the officers are giving.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Colston. Thank you, Mr. Gately. Question C is from Ms. Karim, so that will be a written response. It's still not here. Question D, do we have Mr. Story available via Zoom? So we'll just bring him into the room. If we can just wait 1 second.
Mr. Story is now in the room.
Excellent. Over to you, please, Councillor Gaines.
Good evening, Mr. Story. Thank you for your question. The council has, sorry, I need to take glasses off. The council has no plans to change our current policy, which is to rely on the contributions from private developers to deliver social housing. That said, we will make the most of any opportunities that may arise from time to time to increase the supply of social housing here in West Berkshire. A current example of this, working with different funding, is the Local Authority Housing Fund project, where the council is investing £5.4 million and partnering with the Department of Housing, Levelling Up and Communities to lever £3.8 million of government funding to provide 27 units of accommodation for Afghan and Ukrainian families, which will become available for general housing needs in the medium to long term. Do you have a supplementary?
I do. Given that we have a real deficit of social housing in the district, do you not think it's very short-sighted not to at least consider direct investment in social housing?
At the moment, Mr. Story, we actually have, as you're aware, some problems with our finances. We have a financial situation, as do most councils across the country, and most councils do not have their own housing stock. Most councils do rely on developer contributions and social housing providers such as Sovereign and Asta. We at the moment are going to do exactly the same thing. We will, as I said in the beginning, we'll take every opportunity to try and take advantage of anything that's going, and especially government funding. But we cannot at this time to have our own housing stock, except for the ones we have part of the emergency and temporary accommodation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are you Miss Karim? No. Okay, sorry, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to question E, which is asked by Mr. Anthony Pigg and Mr. Vickers, or Councillor Vickers, to answer, please.
I'm not a councillor anymore, but I am.
Thank you, Mr. Pigg.
Various decisions by the election.
Thank you, Mr. Pigg. Yes, thank you very much for your question. Subject close to my heart, as you know, as a former member of the Newbury Society Executive Committee. We have been experiencing staff shortages recently, sadly, in conservation, due to an internal secondment basically having to be redeployed. But the council has now, I'm pleased to say, just recruited a new conservation officer who will start next month. And we will look at the 8 heritage sites that have been proposed for local listing, and decisions will be made as soon as practicable. Have you got supplementary?
Can I be reassured that the local listing process, for which the West Berkshire Heritage Forum, of which I am chairman, is responsible as a delegated function from this council, can I be reassured will continue to be supported in a consistent manner, and in consequence that decisions passed, recommendations passed to it for decisions, will be dealt with in a very considerably more expeditious manner than these decisions have?
We will certainly give every support we can to your forum, but I can't promise a timescale. It's got to fit in with everything else, given the financial situation. But we hope to do better than has been the case in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to question F, is Ms. Sanderson in the room? Virtual room.
Ms. Sanderson is now in the room.
Excellent. So, Councillor Vickers, if you could answer question F, please.
Drafts are in a different order to what is the final order, but I'm nearly there.
I'm here.
I know you're here. Paula. Nearly
Tired.
ready.
There's been a lot of rain. I'm pretty tired.
Um,
Tired and tetchy.
sorry to hear that.
Been an awful lot of rain in the last few
Mr.
days.
Anderson, if Councillor Vickers can answer the question, please. We've got lots to get through this evening. Thanks.
Sorry, I've now gone and lost it after that. Sorry. Bear with me a minute, and I'll find it again. Yes. Oh, gosh. Sorry about this, Chairman. Right. This is, or was, I think, a different number, question F in the previous
Yeah,
lot.
well, Tony,
Yep.
yes, my darling.
Yeah, not your fault. They've reordered it and I hadn't spotted that. Yeah, my answer to you, Ms. Saunderson, note that it was under the previous administration that a promise of a supplementary answer was made. And we know planning officers were redeployed to get the Regulation 19 local plan through in the following weeks to that meeting. However, I can only apologise to you that you still haven't received a written response as promised. Now, the London Road Industrial Estate, or Bond Riverside, is in the local plan review as a designated employment area. And it's not intended to extend the London Road Industrial Estate as paragraph 7.10 in the LPR states clearly. And as an existing designation, it doesn't need to comply with the National Planning Policy Framework, Chapter 14, paragraph 160, as I'm advised, especially as there is no change to the strategic policy proposed in the submitted local plan review. Do you have a supplementary question?
That's interesting. I think you're wrong. I think that if you try to bring forward a plot by plot within a red line, you will be subject to that.
Okay, do you have a question, please, Ms. Anderson?
Yes, I'd like to invite Councillor Colston to present the current work that Ardent are doing to the Newbury Flood and Drainage Forum on the 26th
Ms.
of
Saunderson, I think
October.
you'll have to ask him that. You're asking me a
But I did
supplementary
ask if he could answer the
relating to
question. I did ask if he could answer the question. So anyhow, the
Well,
offer's out
what's the
there.
question? I will put that to Councillor Colston.
Can
Thank
I
you.
just say I also don't need a reply to my other two questions. I'm quite happy to have a written reply from Councillor Lewis to what numbers is it now? M and R. So that should cut down on time. Thank you.
Thank you very much
Excellent.
for that.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. And we'll provide a written response to question M and question R in our agenda pack. Moving on to question G by Mr. Morgan for Councillor Lewis to answer, please.
Good evening, Mr. Morgan. Thank you very much for your question. So work is underway to reinstate the grass football pitch at Faraday Stadium, including provision of the changing areas. The reinstated grass sports pitch will be available for bookings for local teams.
I don't think that's the question I asked you, is it?
I've got at the executive meeting, 6th of July, 2023, the leader of the opposition claimed in his question that the councillor did not announce.
It's about the sports hub, my question.
Yes, it goes on to the sports hub. I've got this as question G.
Yeah, we up on the screen, Mr. Morgan, your question as submitted.
She's answering a question about Faraday Road. I've not asked about Faraday Road. That's what I'm saying.
But the final part of my statement will say that the decision relating
Okay,
to...
Councillor Lewis, if you can give your answer to your question, Mr. Morgan, if you can hear the answer and then ask a supplementary if you have one. Sure. Thanks.
Okay, so the reinstated grass sports pitch will be available for bookings for local teams from early November. The decision relating to the proposed Newbury Sport Hub is being considered by the Executive Committee, and that will be in November 2023.
Okay.
Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. I find it quite strange after quite a long period of time that we're still debating the Newbury Sports Hub. And if you look at some of the other questions on Cabral, for example, there's a lot of it is to do with the Sports Hub. Why are we just not take a decision that the Sports Hub as it currently is no longer a viable project? I just don't understand why we keep eking it out, really. So my question is, so I guess what you're saying, Councillor Dillon, is that the executive in November the decision with respect to the sports hub will be either approved or not. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. And we just
Okay.
had to go through the process to make
So
sure that.
so basically you're refuting what Councillor McKinnon, so it won't be built at the moment, is what you're saying, I guess.
Councillor Lewis can't preempt a decision of this executive. There will be a paper coming to the executive in November with a clear recommendation on it. And then the executive will make a decision. Once that's done, it will be formal. But obviously the decisions need to be taken in a formal setting.
Yeah, I'm just surprised it's taken so long, that's all. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to question H, which is Mr. Alan Pearce, to be answered by Councillor Vickers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Pearce. The answer is yes. The existing site drains via a network of surface water pipes go into the existing public Thames water sewers.
So the urban runoff leaving the site
Do you have a supplementary question?
did increase. Yes, I do. Thank you. That work was done on permitted development. Can you tell me, were all the conditions for permitted development complied with?
As you know, Mr. Pearce, there is a live enforcement investigation taking place at the moment, and that's one of the things we'll be looking at. Did it actually have consent for exactly what was done? And we will contact you once that investigation is complete.
So just to clarify then, that's still going on, the investigation?
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question I is by Mr. Tom Marino, to be answered by myself. So thank you for the question, Mr. Marino. I've spoken to Councillor Lewis regarding your question so that we're clear on the context in which the tweet was sent. However, the substantive answer to your question, is it acceptable? Then the answer is clearly no. However, the context of the tweet that was sent out is important. And we know members of the opposition have fallen foul of tweets in the past as well. And the context is ever so important. And I know Councillor Bowick will appreciate that. So the photo, there was a photo taken of a set of instructions that went with a pet grooming brush. This had been brought on Amazon and it was sold by a professional business. The reference with the hashtag was based on the translation from a different language, presumed to be Chinese, as the item was made in China. The tweet was to highlight that a company had not done due diligence on its literal translation, so there was an alternative meaning to the instruction, not quite as intended. So the hashtag Chinglish was used, which is possibly the crux of your question. The councillor is sorry that they put the tweet out and they did remove it. And thank you for bringing it to our attention. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Leader. That sounds weird. It feels a bit strange being on this side rather than over there. But no, I appreciate that comprehensive answer. And again, it wasn't anything about Councillor Lewis personally. It was just obviously, I feel that seeing as you're going to bring the opposition into it, I feel that if it was one of them, there would have been a lot more heat about it. But my supplementary question is, given recent, I would say, inappropriate comments and behaviour made by Liberal Democrat councillors, will you be doing more within your group in future to stop things like that from happening?
I'm happy with the behaviour of my members on social media. Thank you. Okay, moving on to question K, Mr. Goatley, to be answered by Councillor Colston.
Hello again, Mr. Goatley. Thank you for this question. The environmental improvements and the greening of the site that are being designed by Ardent are in fact at ground level only, and are therefore in line with the statement in the Avison Young environmental appraisal. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you for the answer there. I'm a bit concerned about that one because anything underground under that road, Faraday Road, is basically in water. And so drainage systems won't work, as we've been told earlier. And I'm just wondering, who has actually read the Ardent report, who has read the water cycle, and who has read the government SUDS manual? Because there's certain officers that we know haven't. And these are the people that are advising you. Are you not worried by this?
I think that's a separate question to the proposed greening of the site that we're doing in the next couple of months. But
well, I'm just trying to save you from legal action, is to actually, I think you yourself have got to understand such sustainable drainage, because at the moment it is
Okay,
illegal.
thank you, Councillor Goatley. Councillor Colston, if you can finish your answer.
Well, thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Vickers to answer Mr. Pick's question L, please.
Hello again, Mr. Pick, and I must say, you know, we're extremely grateful for all the work you do in this area. But the Newbury Town Centre Conservation Area Appraisal will need to be reconsulted on following the publication of the first draft document. I mean, that draft was poorly researched, as I think you know.
I'm sorry.
Am I looking at the wrong one?
I believe not. The question I asked.
Sorry. Yeah, wrong question. You've got 3 down and I'm asking.
But no, this is number L, please.
Trouble is, it's not L in mine. Yeah.
This is the Historic Environment Action Plan prepared by my colleague, Mr. Sue Ellis, who is here.
Right.
And published April of last year, submitted for your observation. No reaction has been, and all we need is some comments on planning.
Yeah, okay. So if we let Councillor Vickers just grab the right question up.
Right, almost
It's
there.
on the screen as well, Councillor Vickers, if you need.
Well, I can't read the screen over
behind
there.
you.
I know a company called Specsavers.
Right. It's all right, I'll get there.
Okay, I tell you what we'll do, Mr. Pick, is
I got it.
No, I want an answer today, please.
I know I was just going to move on to another question and then call you back. But if Councillor Vickers has now got it on his screen, we'll proceed. Okay, Councillor Vickers, I'm going to say, Mr. Pick, if you could just take a seat and I'll just call you back up once Councillor Vickers has got his place. Mrs. Saunderson has said she would have a written response to question M. So if we move to question N, which is Mr. Morgan, to be answered by Councillor Colston, please.
Right.
Hello again.
Hi, Mr. Morgan. Thank you for your question.
Okay.
So the Wharf project was one of the major proposals of the Newbury Master Plan, which was developed in 2021, which received over 4,000 responses to the public consultation, which is a really high response rate. And based on those responses, turning the wharf into a public shared open space ranked as one of the most popular proposals. The £5.3 million figure was a cost estimate provided by consultants for what the entire wharf improvement project would cost if the council upgraded it all at once. But that isn't what we're planning. The council has therefore not made this budget available for the whole project, and there are no current plans to do so. Instead, we've secured £795,000 of grant funding for the project from external sources, and those are the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and the Thames Valley LEP. This is the only money currently allocated to the project, and our intention is to deliver it in stages as further external funding becomes available. Officers will keep bidding for external funding to support the wharf and other projects to improve our town centres. Do you have a supplementary based?
Yes, I do. Thanks for clarifying that. So
okay.
Basically, the first point is it's a conservative policy that initially kicked this off.
No, it's not a conservative policy. It was based on a project done, yes, under the last administration, but based on public consultation.
Thanks for clarifying. So are you saying that you will not spend more than £795,000 on any?
No, I said that we've so far secured that money. So that's external funding. And if we can, if and when we are able to secure further external funding, it is our intention to do more of it.
So thank you, Mr. Morgan. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Mr. Morgan, thank you. That you've had your supplementary question. You had 2 supplementary questions there.
Well, I don't think I did.
So you did, Mr. Morgan. No, I didn't. You did. Mr. Councillor Vickers, have you got your answer to question L?
Yes, I have it.
Excellent. So if you could answer Mr. Pick's question, please.
Well, it's very similar, Mr. Pick, to the last one. We have been experiencing staff shortages recently in conservation due to an internal secondment. However, the council has just recruited a new conservation officer who will start next month and will look at the 8 heritage aspects.
I'm not asking you to look at the 8 heritage recommendations on local listing. I'm asking about
Well, all the work that is needed to be done in conservation will be done by that one officer in due course.
It's just a planning.
Mr. Pick, the portfolio holders aren't answering the question. If you can let him get to the end of his answer, please, and then you can ask a supplementary, sir. Thank you.
Well, I have finished my answer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Supplementary, sir.
Given that this is entirely a planning matter, not a heritage matter, and could be answered by any planning officer that we are aware of, all we're looking for is planning observations on this document. Can it please be expedited? It's April of last year, and we've been asking for it now for months and getting delayed answers.
You can have it as soon as possible. April last year, this administration was not in place. The delay is largely caused by problems under the previous administration, and given the financial situation we've inherited, we have not been able to recruit that officer, and it has to be, or she has had to be redeployed, the only resource we had. It needs to be done by a conservation officer, as I'm told. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pick. Question O is by Mr. Pearson's to be answered by myself. So thank you for the question, Mr. Pearce. I can confirm that it was my decision. The reason for that decision was that I did not see any value in having lawyers attend a meeting to discuss the council's overall long-term approach to the London Road industrial estate. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do, please. Would you consider having a meeting with my legal counsel and yourself and the CEO?
It would depend on the purpose of the meeting, Mr. Pearce. But if the purpose of the meeting is to have an open discussion regarding the long-term approach to London Road, then it's my belief that legal representatives would potentially inhibit rather than assist an open conversation. I've had meetings with you in the past, one-to-one. Be happy to have those again. Once you have lawyers in the room, the dynamic of that conversation changes. It becomes a legalese conversation rather than one that's outcome-based. Thank you.
Just clarify then, you did say you'd have another meeting with me. Can we organise that as soon as possible, please?
So I think, so we've got diaries are actively being looked at for meetings.
Right, thank you for the answer. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, please, to question P, which is Mr. Goatley, to be answered by Councillor Vickers.
Is it?
It's the change in order that's messed me up.
On a point of order, Leader, I know that public questions has a time limit of 30 minutes. I just wonder if there's a chance we run out of time here, if we could add on a few minutes, given the delay in answering some of the questions.
Yeah, Councillor McKinnon, my administration has always allowed public questions to be completed and not curtail them when they hit the time limit, unlike your previous administration. So I'm sure we will allow those to be answered, but the point of order would come into effect once the time limit is reached. Thank you.
Okay, I see we've started early.
Councillor Vickers, are you in?
Sorry, Leader, I had this down for another a portfolio holder to answer, and that's what it says on here, actually. So that's why I've caught. It's down for Councillor for Janine, but I will read the answer that has been prepared.
Thank you.
The Liberal Democrats' manifesto commitment to return football to Faraday Stadium will be delivered. this autumn. I think we said that already today to somebody else. This has changed the context of the development of Newbury Sports Hub, and this matter will now be further reconsidered by Executive Committee in November this year. Do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you for your answer, and you'll be surprised to know, no, I don't have a supplementary question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gately. I think that's your 3 questions, and you were concerned that you weren't going to get to ask them all. So you managed to get through them. Okay, we'll move on to question Q, please, which is by Councillor Pick. Sorry. Is it a habit, Mr. Pick? I was used to you being a councillor for a good number of years. But Councillor Vickers to answer, please.
Had that up, so I had a sort of passport pulled on me with Mr. Goatley's. Right, I'm ready. Okay, I think we started the answer to this one before, Mr. Pick. Newbury Town Centre Conservation Area Appraisal. Yeah, it will need to be reconsulted on following the publication of the first draft. That draft, we believe, was poorly researched, and I think the Newbury Society agreed with us on that. I think you know that the Society and the Town Council were very disappointed at what the previous administration had allowed to be published without really full consultation with them. But with the appointment of a new conservation officer starting next month, they will have responsibility for reviewing the draft and taking this task forward. And when we think it's ready, there will be a further consultation before it can be adopted. However, the appraisal of the revised draft and of any new town centre planning applications, including for the Kennet Centre, will proceed along separate timescales. And the adoption of the Newbury Town Centre Conservation Area Appraisal will be influenced by the responses received to the next consultation, as is only right. So no, it cannot be said with confidence that the appraisal will be adopted before a decision is made on the redevelopment of the Kennet Centre, which we want to proceed as quickly as possible so that there is not blight that end of the town.
Do you have a supplementary, Mr. Pick? Yeah, just a microphone on, please, sir.
Right, thank you so much. Can I be reassured that consultation take place as soon as appropriate, because of the fact that consultation did not take place on this. The first draft is the cause of all the problems that we had.
You can be reassured, and the way we're going to manage this is we're going to use the experienced officer that we have, who is very familiar with the Newbury Town Centre area, to deal with any planning application that comes forward on the Kennet Centre, and the new person that comes in will be looking at the more wider aspects of the appraisal. So you'll have 2 separate people, as is only right, one dealing with the policy and one dealing with the implementation of any application.
And the consultation take place with the Town Council and with,
of course,
the Newbury Society.
Of course, above all else, but also a full public consultation.
Thanks very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Yeah, go on.
Thank you. This is a positive comment. I know we've had a bit of whataboutery already this evening.
We haven't, but carry on.
Well, we have twice. A suggestion. I'm looking at the agenda on ModGov at the moment, and the questions are lettered, assigned differently from what we're looking at this evening. So it's unfortunate that the Councillor Vickers got so out of sorts, so kerfuffle, but maybe that's down to the. So if it was ordered a bit more consistently, then I'm sure Councillor Vickers.
They are.
I'm going to go to our officer, please. Thanks.
If you look at the supplementary agenda that was issued, which it contains all of the questions, because obviously there are questions that are received just the Monday prior to the agenda, well, after having the agenda sent out. So that includes all of the questions, and there's a supplementary agenda with all of the questions, and that's the order that we're going tonight.
I'm just saying that we've got inconsistency here.
We don't, Councillor Bowick, you're looking at the wrong agenda. There's been a supplementary pack sent out in the interim period.
I'm looking at the agenda that's on ModGov.
Yeah, and there's a supplementary pack. There's a supplementary pack that's been sent out. Okay, so your point taken. Thank you. Thanks.
Right.
We'll carry on with the questions, please. We'll carry on with the questions, please. So Paula Sanderson will have a written response to question R. Mr. Morgan to be answered by Councillor Cottenham, please. And thank you for joining holidays briefly, Councillor Cottenham.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, carry on, please.
Good. Thank you very much, Mr. Morgan, for your question. So the forecast expenditure for both projects focuses on the construction and the project management costs with a view to bringing the assets into operational use in subsequent financial years. The playing pitch action plan budgeted costs in particular are focused on identifying and constructing new sports pitches across the district. All forecast expenditure at Q1 is an estimate, and final outturn figures will be dependent on the progress of the projects during the current financial year. Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Morgan?
Yes, I do. It's a shame you haven't answered my question, which is to provide a breakdown of where the figures have come from. Let me explain to the reason I'm asking the question. On EX4332, you've got a total of £4.128 million. On this latest figures which is in your capital budget, it's now gone up to £4.9 million. So there's a delta of £833,000. Now, my question to you as a portfolio holder for finance, where is these figures coming from? I wrote to the council.
Okay, thank you. So that's the question. Where are the figures coming from?
My original question was that, Councillor Liddell, and it's not been answered.
So well, you asked for a break. You asked for a breakdown in this one, and then it was said that it would be dependent on the final outturn at the financial year, which is why it can't be given. I've asked for where those figures come from. It says in it, please can you provide a full and detailed breakdown of what these costs cover and provide. It's quite clear in my question, Councillor. And the answer was that they can't be provided until the final outturn figures, which are dependent on the progress of the project during the current financial year. So no, they were the original ones, but in terms of they're not the original ones. The original question is Mr. Morgan, I'm not going to have a row with you over it. The portfolio holder gave you an answer that said it's dependent on the final outturn figures. I've asked where the figures come from, Councillor Gill, and I have not received the answer to that question. Simple question. Well, you didn't. You asked for a breakdown of the costs, exactly. And it said, and that can't be provided until the end of the financial year. But where the figures come from? So that's and I accept that. No wonder the council is such a financial mess. I accept that as a supplementary question. Councillor Cottenham, do you need a written response to that, or can you answer?
Yes, I think I'll give Mr. Morgan a written response to this question.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Leader, I have a point of order, please.
Okay.
Thanks.
State the part of the Constitution in relation to the point of order.
It's the Members' Code of Conduct, Leader.
Okay.
In Councillor Bowick's point that he just made, he said there had been a bit of whataboutery and was about to continue. You immediately interrupted him and made a comment, well, no, there hasn't been. Now, the Members' Code of Conduct asks that we all treat each other with respect. We are the opposition. Sometimes we're going to say things that you don't like, but we have a right to be heard and not cut off for no good reason.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McKinnon. But the point of order that Councillor Bowick was referencing had been answered by the officer with a clear explanation that a supplementary pack had been coming, and I didn't accept that there has been whatever phrase Councillor Bowick used.
He just said there had been some whataboutery, and you cut across him and said, no, there hasn't.
Regarding answering or giving more time for questions. And I said that we will give more time for questions. Your administration never did. That was just a point of fact.
That's relevant to the point I'm making right now.
That public questions should be fully aired, which is a view that you didn't seem to hold for the last 4 years.
That's nothing to do with the point that I've just raised.
Councillor Colston to answer question T, please, from Mr. Pearce.
Hi, Mr. Pearce. Thank you for your question. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for your patience and to apologise for the time taken to get you an answer to this question from June. As I did mention in an email, I was unaware of the process of procedure for answering supplementaries back then, and so I was a bit slow off the mark getting your answer, so sorry for that. To answer the question, an assessment of the risk of a legal challenge for a planning application would need to be undertaken when that particular planning application was submitted. Because it would depend on the nature of the proposal. We have, however, reviewed the general risks to the programme of there being opposition against any proposals that come forward. And that risk would need to be mitigated by the applicant party engaging and seeking the endorsement of all relevant statutory consultees. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you for your answer. No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pearce. Mr. Pick, question you to be answered by Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Mr. Pick. And I'm very grateful for any offer of assistance from your Heritage Forum. The Newbury Town Centre Conservation Area Appraisal, which I already referred to in a previous answer, is already in progress, and we've just recruited a new conservation officer, as I've also said before. The team will continue to work with the local community to progress work on the remaining conservation area appraisals, assisted by national and local planning policies, which recognise the importance of our local heritage. And a response will be prepared as soon as practicable so that the document can be issued for consultation. Do you have a supplementary question?
My question didn't relate to the Newbury conservation area appraisal. It referred to conservation area appraisals in general.
But that's the first one. So
they're 40 years out of date.
We've not been in administration for 40 years.
No.
I fully share your view. Can we please move to a supplementary?
So I'm sorry, I needed to stress that point because of its importance. 2020, a working group was set up by myself in collaboration with the officers of the council to progress local conservation area appraisals, with the able support of my colleague, Mrs. Stu Ellis, who is fully qualified to give training courses on the subject. And therefore, can that be resurrected, and can those processes be started up again, please?
I would hope so. I attended one of those courses and they were very valuable. And it's been extremely frustrating, the pace at which this work has occurred. But we have not been responsible hitherto. We've been left with a very difficult financial situation. And I can't promise a timescale, but we'll do our best. We feel very strongly about this.
Thank you for your reply.
Thank you, Mr. Pick. We move on to question V, Mr. Morgan, to be answered by Councillor Cottenham, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morgan, for your question. Right, so the final capital requirement for the Lido was £5.7 million, and this was financed through the use of the community infrastructure levy. So do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Morgan?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that answer. The reason I get so frustrated and upset with asking for figures is that it doesn't seem to be, it's not just this council, it's the previous council. It doesn't seem to have the ability to come up with a fully costed business case or cost of ownership. For example, you're aware, aren't you? Certainly looking at the original cost for the Lido, I think you said on there that you had 180k per annum to repay for the Lido. We now know the Public Works Loan Board is way over that. So my question was, are you prepared to go off for, are you loaning that from the Public Works Loan Board or not? And if you are, which I presume you are, have you taken into account the interest rates have increased drastically? And can I please have a copy of that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
thank you, Mr.
if you
Morgan.
can answer this question.
Yeah.
But before I go, I'm very experienced at doing business cases and total cost of ownership. I will offer you guys here my expertise at no charge to help you guys because I think it's needed.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Let's see Councillor Cottenham's question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Cottenham, do you have an answer?
I must admit, I need to get a written answer to Mr. Morgan on his final point on how we're funding extra money. So I don't have Joseph to hand, but whether Joseph can say.
So I'm happy to go to the officer because I think the answer. I think the answer's probably in the original answer, actually.
It's not that.
We're going to answer your supplementary now, which is around the funding and the interest rates in the PWLB. Councillor, Mr. Holmes.
Put my offer as well. I'd like a response on that. And I'll respond to it.
The offer, thank you.
Yeah, if you get smart,
I know, and I'm saying thank you for the offer, Mr. Morgan. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
come back to me with that.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Through you, as it's community infrastructure levy funded, then we didn't undertake any borrowing for this scheme.
Excellent. So that would mean not linked to any of the interest rates currently on the PWLB websites. Thank you. So through the community infrastructure levy, so developers. Okay, so that's the answer. Mr. Morgan, please stop trying to talk over the meeting. Thank you. Question W, Mr. Pearce, to be answered by Councillor Lewis, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Pearce. So the development of a sports pitch at Manor Park was explored, has a potential mitigation for the loss of a grass pitch at Newbury Rugby Club if the Newbury Sports Hub was developed. However, there's a requirement in the playing pitch strategy to increase the number of sports pitches. So consideration of this proposal was also relevant in the wider context of the playing pitch strategy. Do you have a supplementary?
The number one, yes, I do. Thank you for your answer. The number one priority of the pitch playing strategy was for replacement for Faraday Road. So that would make Monk's Lane a replacement for Faraday Road. Is that right? Was Monk's Lane a replacement for Faraday Road?
Yeah, so Faraday Road is being returned to football. Anything else is being reviewed at the moment.
So originally
so
it was
some papers that have to be reported back on the in November, and the playing pitch strategy and its priorities are currently being reviewed because there were some changes in the government legislation.
Right. Can I just clarify there if I
I'll
may?
put it in writing to you so that you can see the response that I read out.
Okay, right.
Lovely. Thank you, Mr. Pearce. Question X, Mr. Morgan, to be answered by Councillor Lewis.
Thank you again, Mr. Morgan. The decision to reinstate the grass pitch at Faraday Road Stadium means that the planning context and advice given by Sport England in relation to the development of Newbury Sports Hub has changed. The Executive Committee will shortly also be taking decisions relating to a planning application for a sports pitch at Manor Park and the future of Newbury Sports Hub. Once these decisions are made, Sport England will be informed and the revised planning context will be clarified. Have you got any supplementaries?
Yes, you state that Sport England's policy advice has changed. Can you explain that? Does that mean they've withdrawn their joint statement? What does that actually mean?
It means that there have been some changes.
I haven't got the answer yet, Councillor.
No. So thank you for the question.
Right, okay.
I was saying thank you for the question.
So there's been some changes within the playing sports pitch strategy. We can get more details to you in writing once we're aware of them.
Is that the reviewee you're talking about?
That's for the review of it. And once we've also looked at the review of the play pitch strategy priorities for ourselves.
But that's reviewee that you're talking about, or that's something totally new?
There was the legislation change.
What legislation change? I'm sorry, I'm not being awkward. I don't understand what you mean.
The play pitch strategy, which was given out by the government, that has changed. They've made some other recommendations in that, and that is currently being looked at the moment.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Moore, we can get you some written comments on your detailed question there. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then if you can stay there, Mr. Morgan.
I can stay here, yeah.
Thank you. And then it's Councillor Cottenham, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morgan, for your question. This post will be 100% funded from the Transformation Fund by the flexible use of capital receipts. I noticed within your question, you say there's no income. This particular post is actually will be generating cost savings. The approval for this post took place on the 16th of March in full council after the budget was set in 23-24. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that answer. I'm glad you mentioned it was approved in March of this year. I'm going to keep it simple here. We're talking about a post which has got a salary of 126k to 135k for an internal position, and that was in the document that went through. It's in the document. It's in C4345 Nigel Lynn 8th of March report.
Yeah, no, just for clarity, that's total cost, not salary. That's
Okay,
all.
that's what it says.
Yeah.
It says in here. The annual cost of the service director will be in the region of 126 to 135.
Yeah, the cost, but you said salary, no, that's all.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I'll correct myself. So that's one hell of an increase, I would suspect, for an internal promotion. But my question is this: that decision was made in March. Would the current administration, if you were in charge at that time, done the sensible thing and gone out to an external recruitment rather than just an internal recruitment for this important position? That's my question.
So, sorry, I've just some advice from officers, please.
I believe that specific question was asked when it was approved at council in March. So that'd be an additional question that's already been answered.
It wouldn't, because the new administration is sitting here. My question is, if the new administration were in charge in March, would they have gone out for an external or an internal appointment? That's my question. It's a simple question, guys. It's very easy.
Okay, I'm going to ask Councillor Brooks to answer the supplementary because it's related to HR, which is Councillor Brooks's brief rather than the financial brief, which the primary question was about. Thanks.
That's fine.
Mr. Morgan, it's a matter of record that I pressed the administration at the time to go externally for this post.
That's fine.
I'm happy to add, I'm allowed to add something, I think.
Okay.
I'm happy to add that I'm extremely happy with the post holder who was appointed.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes public questions. Thank you to all those members of the public for asking. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. Item 5 is petitions. Have we any petitions?
None received.
Okay, thank you. So moving on then to the substantive items on the agenda items. Item 6 is the capital financing report for the financial year 23-24 Q1. Can I ask Councillor Cottingham to introduce the report, please?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Yes, hopefully everyone's had a opportunity to read the report 4361. What I can do is go through some of the headlines of the report per se. As you can see, there is an underspend of 15.1 million, down from 87.8 million to 72.7 million. There is going to be a reprofiling of that amount, roughly 14.1 million into 24-25. There is a funding charge net increase of expenditure of just under 2 million and a reduction in council required funds of 4.4 million. There's various new projects which are within the document. As we know, the Public Works Loan Board interest rates are currently at 5%, which is above the historical 2 to 3%. So what we're trying to do is to fund as much as we possibly can from internal resources. And as I say, the long-term borrowing of West Berkshire Council stood at 182 million as of the end of March 23. I think probably the most important aspect of the report is section 7, which states that the long-term sustainability of the capital programme with a projected headroom of over 100 million in 2026. The comment from the section 151 officer, Mr. Holmes, is confident that the capex is affordable within the long-term plan of the council.
Thank you, Councillor Cottingham. So that report needs a proposer, and as you're not in the room, I'll propose that from the chair, and Councillor Brooks will second that. Are there any questions or comments from executive members? No, thank you. Members from the opposition, any comments or questions? I know this was at OSA or at scrutiny, sorry, as well last week. Councillor Stewart, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cottingham. It's you may or may not be surprised that I've been looking at the adult social care sections as I go through. And on page 27, 5.6, and I know what it's like sometimes you're having to fly about the paper. So, but basically it mentions 2 programs, modernising adult social care and learning disability supported living at Walnut Close transformation as forecast to be delivered with the exception of these 2 projects. No reprofiling has been requested into later financial years. Can I assume that means that these 2 programs have been stopped?
I personally, I'm not aware of that. We are looking to look at the entire capital programme, but again, I probably need to refer to the relevant officer for that answer, so we can give you a written answer to that.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Coe can give some info.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so certainly elements have been removed. I think more than happy to give you a detailed summary in writing, but yeah, it's not a full removal, but elements have been removed.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor McKinnon, apologies, I didn't come to you first as the leader of your group. I didn't see the hand on the screen before I saw Councillor Stewart's in person. So over to you, Councillor McKinnon, or you.
Leader, that's absolutely fine. And Councillor Stewart took the words right out of my mouth. So no contribution from me required.
Lovely. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Marsh.
Thank you very much. Well, I hesitate to mention the Monks Lane Sports Hub, as we've heard quite a lot about it from the public, but I'm going to, because I just want clarification, really. So, because I'm not sure if it came out in the answers that were given to the members of the public, the substantial sum that was put in the capital budget for this project. Now that it's pretty widely acknowledged that this is a complete dead duck, and in fact, Newbury Rugby Club this week informed its members that this isn't going to happen. What is the status of that capital funding? In other words, is it going to go into? I know that you said you're going to consider it in November. Is that currently there? Is it being reallocated to the playing pitch strategy, or is it more money that is underspent and will be potentially reprofiled in the future? Thank you.
I think, as I said earlier, the answer to that question is we are looking at all of the capital projects. So it is likely that we will endeavour to reprofile that amount into another project. And as I say, we will then come back with the reprofiling of all of our capital projects at a later date.
And may I just ask?
Please, Councillor.
Thank you for that. That's clear. The money that the council taxpayers will be paying to the rugby club for its legal fees, is that something that's going to be added to the revenue shortfall? Is it written off as part of the capital, or is it just? I mean, where's that coming from?
So, Councillor Cottenham, if I could just for you, so the paper that comes in November, and you are right, there are some abortive costs within it. That will clearly be put in the paper along with the recommendation, and then where those funds are met from, Councillor Marsh. So whether that comes from the revenue budget, for example. Okay. Any more questions at all? Yeah, Councillor Culver, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. Where are we? 5.11. It talks about underspend on the joint venture with Sovereign. Are members able to give me a bit more information on why that is? Are we finding maybe that Sovereign are not being cooperative? A bit more information would be welcome. Thank you, Councillor Cottenham.
Okay, so obviously I just declare an interest, Councillor Culver, as an employee of Sovereign, but I'll leave others to answer the question. Councillor Cottenham, I mean, the problem is it's a finance paper, but they're not finance questions really, they're policy questions. So maybe Councillor Gaines, you might be more appropriate to answer that.
We are currently looking at joint ventures with Sovereign, Councillor Culver. There are a couple in the pipeline. So those will be two of those will be the ones that we're talking about. We're still in negotiation with Sovereign on those.
So do you know what kind of timescale you're working to for that?
I'd like to say ASAP.
Okay.
But it does include obviously things like legal requirements. So that will take a little bit longer, as you can appreciate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions at all from any other members? No. Okay, thank you. So this report's been proposed and seconded. So this is to note. So can I see all those in favour, please? Thank you. That's carried. Moving on then to item 7, which is the 23-24 revenue financial performance quarter 1. Over to you again, please, Councillor Cottenham.
Thank you very much, Leader. So again, hopefully everyone's had the opportunity to read report 4360. Again, I will give a quick overview as this was discussed at scrutiny last week. As we know, there was significant overspend in Q1, mainly within the People Directorate. This overspend and the projected overspend for the year end is mainly due to the inflationary pressures both on the price of delivering services and the demand, along with additional agency costs, worker costs, which we're having to serve. So in mitigation, the current administration has strengthened the internal financial control environment of West Berkshire by council of creating the financial review panel. What we're doing there is having additional review for approving of staff, recruitment of staff and agencies costs. Any expenditure over £1,000 for overspending services is reviewed. And we're also investigating opportunities for capital receipts to be redeployed into the transformation programme. At the time when the first Q1 outcome was received, the projected overspend was 8.7 million. This has now fallen to 6.3 million against the general fund of 7.2 million. As I said earlier, the main overspend areas are with 5.8 million within the People Directorate, of which Children and Family Services are 3.7 million, Adult Social Care just under £1 million, Education with the Home to School Transport of 1.3 million and Place of 0.6 million. No doubt we've probably all seen in the press numerous councils issuing Section 114 notices, and the fact that there is a definite bow wave of councils facing very similar financial difficulties with spend exceeding their initial budget plans or social care regarding both adult and children. But hopefully, as I said earlier, with the extra scrutiny which we're putting in place with the financial review panel, we will bring the year-end projected budget in a balanced state. As I say, we're working very, very hard with laser-like determination to make sure that the revenue budget balances for 23-24.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Cottingham. And again, I'll propose that from the chair, and Councillor Brooks will second that. Members of the executive, any comments or questions? Councillor Brooks.
Chairman, Councillor Cottingham has told us about the proposed forecast overspends and the significant pressures in the Children and Young People Directorate, children coming into care and massive costs associated with that. However, I've been very disappointed since I've been able to look more closely at the recruitment procedures here, particularly with temporary workers, which, as you know, Chairman, had gone up to nearly £12 million in the last financial year. The buying processes have had to be looked at very, very carefully. It's very, very expensive to bring in temporary workers, contract workers. Press release went out this week, which I instigated, that we had made progress in that. We have reduced the number of temporary workers by 15% in the year, and we've converted over 11, it might have gone up today, people who are working on a temporary basis to come onto our payroll. But what I've been disappointed with is that we appointed a managed service provider several years ago, Commensurate, and we wanted all our temporary workers and contract workers, interim workers, to go through that device. Yet 30% were still not going through that process, leading to increased costs, a lack of compliance in terms of were they compliant in terms of right to work in this country, they had the right training, they had the right accreditations. All of that is spotty if you're not going through a buying process which Commensurate provide. And that to me is lax, and we are sorting that out. Now, you might remember on more than one occasion, I offered my 40 years recruitment experience to the administration at the time and was rebutted on that. Well, now we're going to sort it out. We're going to improve the recruitment process here, the recruitment life cycle. We're going to develop an employee value proposition. Why come and work for this council? All stuff that needed to be here that will help bear down on these costs in the future. And frankly, it's remiss that it hasn't been tackled in the past, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor Brooks. Any other comments or from exec members? Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, only this morning I had an example of the sort of pressures that the previous administration have left us in when I had to sign off for some, budget-related matters. And just on planning, we're not a big spender. We don't account for a very large part of the total revenue budget. But I think our residents and our communities expect a very high quality of service in the whole place-making business. And just 3 areas where I'd like to just say that the causes are beyond our control in councils, and this is actually a national situation. Firstly, the government promised that we would get full recovery for planning fees in April this year, so we factored that into the budget. And I'm not blaming this council, the previous administration. That was, you have to believe what governments say, although it's sometimes rather difficult these days. But that didn't happen, so we've now had a downturn in income. A further downturn in income and planning has come because, given the state of the economy, which was crashed by the previous Prime Minister, there is no certainty in the development industry about construction. Therefore, the numbers of planning applications has dropped significantly. And finally, when the budget was set last year, and this is only one example across the budget, as I'm told by other colleagues on this side, the income was always set at the highest level, highest in the range, and the expenditure was always set at the lowest in the range. That is why we're inheriting this problem, and planning is just a small part of it.
Thank you for those observations and comments, Councillor Vickers. Members opposite, do we have any questions? Councillor McKinnon, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. I was waiting for something like that from, as it turned out, it was Councillor Vickers. Councillor Cottingham, I would commend the way you presented this report. It was done professionally, and I wouldn't really disagree with much of what you said. And certainly we support the tough actions that you're having to take on spending. Councillor Brooks, I've got a question for you, actually. You might not have it to hand, but you might want to get back to me on that. So you mentioned the 30% of agency staff that weren't going through the managed service provider. Out of those, were there any of those that there was a legitimate reason for that, or was it simply procedures not being followed? Now, I appreciate you might not have an accurate answer to that, but if you could get back to me at some point. But, Jeff, Councillor Brooks, by and large, this administration, this opposition, recognise, we were there for 4 years, and we recognise the challenges that that you and other administrations, as Councillor Cottingham said, across the country. Unfortunately, Councillor Vickers couldn't help himself and made a comment about the pressures the previous administration have left us in. I'll remind him that the previous administration left usable reserves £3.5 million higher than we took hold of in 2019. And look, we can play this 2 ways. You can be grown up about it and be honest, or try and rewrite history. The time to criticise the planning element of the budget, as with all elements of our budget, was back in March. All assumptions on income, Councillor Vickers, you mentioned, reserves usage, inflation, interest rates, they were all in there. Now, we didn't hear that from you in March. We had no amendments from the Liberal Democrats. There were from the Greens. But we were promised an emergency budget if the Liberal Democrats were elected. Councillor Abbs made that point quite explicitly. But there's no sign of that. Now, was that just a line to get out of a tight spot in the debate? Now, if you say you're going to do something, I think you should do it. Otherwise, how can anyone trust what you say ever again and what you're saying tonight about the budget? So I'd be careful with that sort of remark in future, Councillor Vickers.
Okay, so I think one question in that, Councillor McKinnon, which was to Councillor Brooks, and I think he's got a response for you.
Thanks.
I do, in as much as I've run these programmes since the mid-90s. And Councillor McKinnon, there's always a temptation for a hiring manager to go to the agency that says, I have a worker for you, here's the CV, this person can start tomorrow, and they go and hire them. That has happened here. We are still tracking down those workers because not only are we spending more on them and we're not sure if they're compliant, we don't know the terms and conditions that have been gone into with the agency, and we don't know how much they're spending in margin and on cost to the agency. And so the answer to your question is, no, I don't know why, but I suspect it is because it was convenient, sir. And it will not be convenient in the future because the Financial Review Panel is looking at this, did it this morning. Any request for off-panel workers come through that, and by golly, you have to have an exceptional reason. That person may not be available through the agencies that the managed service provider uses. If that agency has a unique worker, Councillor McKinnon, that agency is expected to come on the panel and through their buying process. That is the big change. So I can go into this at some length, but there's a lot more of the meeting to go. But happy to talk to you outside of it. But what I'm saying is this should not have been allowed to happen.
Thank you, Councillor.
We'll do that over a period there. Thanks.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. Any other? Councillor Stewart?
Thank you. The aircon's just gone off and all of a sudden everything seems very loud. So I shall bring my voice down a little. I'm really interested to hear what you said, Councillor Brooks. And I'm not going to play any games about anything. The most important thing here is that we have the right workforce. We have a satisfied and empowered workforce, because actually the people that are going to benefit from this are our residents, and in particular from an adult social care point of view. If we can have the right people at the right time in the right place, then everybody wins. I'd be really interested to know, and it's purely for information as much as anything else, and it may be that Councillor Macro actually will be able to provide this. You mentioned, I think, 11 people that have actually transferred across from an agency contract to a permanent position. I'd really like to know what the incentives were, so what you've managed to do in terms of those people wanting to do it, because I think inherently, rightly or wrongly, people think that agency means you get more money. Isn't always the case. Sometimes it's flexibility, in particular for lifestyles. But it would just be really interesting to know what's been achieved there to do that, and whether you can build on that as well.
Well, we're trying to do more and more of that. And when an organisation says it is going to use less temporary workers, less agency workers, there is always then the agency workers, some of them saying, I think I'll go permanent because my income is going to be perhaps at risk. So the one can actually lead to the other. Now, I also think that there's been some very good work done within the personnel HR department to convince them to come across. And I won't go into all those details, but it's just a case of reaching out to people. And people, I say money doesn't matter, it does, but sometimes people want to belong to an organisation and feel they belong to an organisation, and this peripatetic portfolio career is passed them by. We're trying to leverage those sort of things.
But I think, Councillor Stewart, yeah, we'd be happy to share, obviously, on a part two basis, because in effect it's sort of commercially sensitive, because how are we making a difference compared to, in effect, our competitors, other local authorities? So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Do you have any further questions, Councillor Stewart? No, thank you. No, Councillor Marsh, please.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. For Councillor Cottingham, the report says a review of assets will be undertaken with a view to possible sales that could be used for reducing capital financing costs or funding for transformation activity to reduce costs. Can you give some indication of what's being looked at? For example, selling off the council's care homes. Is that the kind of thing that's on the table? And secondly, related to that, something that we would welcome is the commercial property portfolio finally being looked at as part of this exercise, because as you may recall, we've been arguing since we were elected to this council that borrowing £60 million to invest in things like supermarkets hundreds of miles away in Yorkshire are not a good way and that don't perform very well are not a good way to use money that could be used to improve things here for our people in West Berkshire. So it's really just about what you are looking at, and does it include the commercial property portfolio?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Marsh. Councillor Cottenham.
Thank you very much, Councillor Marsh, for your question. So the straightforward answer to your question is yes, we're looking at the commercial property portfolio in its entirety. We're looking at potential opportunities to dispose of elements of that. Obviously, we can't disclose what elements those are, because that's commercially sensitive information, and we don't want to disclose to potential buyers that we're looking to sell those types of assets. What I can say, though, that part of the process which Mr. Holmes took, speaking with DLUC, they did advise looking at the sale of commercial portfolio to use those receipts in a way in which could then be used to within the transformation program as well, but also to supplement the fact that the borrowing was taken out at a cheaper rate, i.e. at 2%, rather than borrowing monies at a current rate of 5%. So yes, we are looking at the commercial property portfolio. Other assets within the West Berkshire, I'm not aware that we're looking at a particular care homes to dispose of.
Thank you. Councillor Culver, please.
Thank you, Leader. In 5.15, it talks about suppression of market demand for that service. Could I be given a little bit more information about what that actually means, please? .15, yeah. Page 51.
So, Mr. Coe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yeah, so in summary, we recognise that in the People Directorate we have a set of demands, but there are a few ways that we can manage that demand. So, for example, early interventions taken in a different way can lead to a reduction of long-term needs. So that's essentially the mitigations we're trying to apply.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay. So that was proposed by myself, seconded by Councillor Brooks. So this recommendation is to note the £6.3 million overspend, to note the implementation of measures included in the report around recruitment staff in an agency, to note the establishment of the financial review panel, and to request that opportunities for raising in-year capital receipts are brought forward to a future exec meeting. Members of the executive, can I see hands in favour of that recommendation? Thank you. That's carried. Okay, we move on to item 8, which is the Corporate Transformation Programme 23 to 25. Councillor Brooks, please.
Thank you, Chairman, Leader. What I'd like to start with is saying we have been doing transformation. Melanie Best and the digital services team led by Phil Rumans has a big work programme on smaller transformative activities. What the new Transformation Service Director post will do is take on bigger transformation projects which are listed in here, which take a fair bit of time to do, but will give us potentially a strong return on the investment of that time and potentially some money. In everything we do, we're looking to achieve operational excellence. And in the 6 areas, we believe we can achieve that. I'm going to come back to recruitment because I actually put this down earlier and I should have perhaps said it in the revenue report. We heard of a contract worker today who's been here 13 years. This is just not good practice, not good necessary for the person, let alone the organisation. So we have put down a corporate review of recruitment, considering ways to improve our recruitment processes whilst reducing agency costs. And that gives an example of some of the, I say low-hanging fruit, but things that are obvious that they need to tackle. We need to tackle. There's a programme of work in terms of the 6 to fix, as we might call them, the big 6 here. It will include questionnaires to staff in the affected areas. It will include an invite to those staff to come and be interviewed and talk to us about the areas. And that could be the most junior member of staff who wants to come along and say something's not as good as it could be here. So it's going to be a pretty intense, detailed, deep dive into these areas. And amongst the questions, you know, I've used this in other places. What were the two things you would start to do that you don't do now? And what is one thing that you'd stop doing? And what one thing you would adapt? Getting people to think and coming forward and telling us where we can change for the better. So that's the paper, Chairman. I have lots of other documents around of methodologies we're picking up. And as I say, the service head, Gabriel Mancini, is very, very keen to get on with this and is beginning to do so.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Because this is to only note, the report doesn't require a vote. Before I open it up to questions, if I could just add that these 6 areas that have been chosen all obviously have transformation of service delivery within them, but also cost mitigation. And that's about making sure that the council's in that secure financial footing going forward. And then I'd also just like to remark that I think that within this transformation programme, as we discussed on Tuesday night, I think it was, I think there's a role for the scrutiny committee to support, you know, the transformation programme as well, whether that be looking at particular areas and then feeding that back into the transformation programme as well. So I can see Councillor McKinnon's got his hand up, so I'll come to you first, sir.
Thank you, Leader. And thanks, Councillor Brooks, for that. Just something that struck me, and particularly in the context of what's just been said about cost mitigation, looking at the areas that the proposal to focus transformation on, there's nothing in there on children and family services. And just, you know, we've just heard about the overspend. That's a significant driver, of course. What was the reason for not looking at that area? Whether, you know, other factors, mitigations at play? Just why is that missing from this list?
I don't think it would be fair to say it's not going to be looked at, Councillor McKinnon. We have a new executive director joining on October the 16th. And I think it's perfectly reasonable for her to look at that and see what transformation could be done independent of this activity. Bear in mind also, members, this is a 2-year programme, and in that time, a new transformation programme will come out. So it's not as if it's not being done, Councillor McKinnon, even if you don't see it here, sir.
And I think I'd just add, I think this is about potentially transforming services rather than a service improvement plan, which we'll be expecting Anne-Marie to pull together. And as you're on that recruitment panel as well, Councillor McKinnon, you'll know she had a good, strong track record as well of delivering financial savings whilst maintaining the safety and the importance of children. Any other questions from you, Councillor McKinnon?
No, thanks both.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Bowick.
Thank you, Leader. I had similar concerns as Councillor McKinnon, and I was going to bring it up in the earlier paper, but I wanted to bring it up here because of a particular chart on page 76. First of all, let me say that I think that I'm really pleased to see the focus on the areas that were set out. I think it's transformation is something that we firmly believe in as the opposition. And I'm also pleased to hear that you've got confidence in the new executive director of people to make sure that quality is delivered. However, the chart on page 76, it does slightly unnerve me because it's entirely about strategic alignment versus savings. Council has a duty to deliver best value, and value is not just price, it's also quality of delivery. So can I be reassured that quality of delivery will be a key component of transformation?
I'm happy to give that assurance, but within that, efficiency. Value for money, delivering services in the most efficient way so that there is the 2 wins. A, they're good, and B, they're economic.
This chart doesn't impart that kind of approach.
No, thank you for drawing that out there, Councillor Bowick. And yeah, absolutely, as I said, one of the areas, there's no point delivering services if they're not quality services. Councillor Culver, please.
Thank you, Leader. I've got a few questions, if I may. Thank you for that introduction, Councillor Brooks. It looks very interesting. In the business support review section, it talks about staff being absorbed into a central business support function. Can you give a reassurance that there wouldn't be any redundancies associated with that?
In any transformation program, you have to leave all options open. Now, that doesn't mean yes or no. It means what I said. We will look at all those areas. When you have financial pressures, you tend to look to bring some controls more centrally. You tend to look for shared services where you can get economies. Could you then look to redeploy staff rather than use the R word into other roles that are vacant? You're asking me for an outcome when I've only just started the input.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you for that. I think you'd probably expect me to ask fairly robust questions with wearing my scrutiny hat. Under accommodation and locality working review, it talks about Market Street, reaching the end of its useful life. Do we have a time scale for that? At what point do we think that we might need to move or to rebuild sections of the offices, for example?
Well, the building could go on for some time. It reaching at the end of its life could be 15 years away. So I'm not going to be a hostage to fortune by talking about this building is not going to be fit to use in a year's time. That's not the case. We're looking at the whole estate, not just about this building. We're looking at every office we have. We're looking at libraries to say, can they be better purposed than just be a library? So there isn't a single thing we've decided. And yes, you look at this building and say, when does the point come, Councillor Culver, then it costs more to keep it going and up to a standard that's required than to actually re-provide. That work is being done.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Brooks. And it talks about co-location with other public sector partners. Can you give us a sense of what that might look like? Are we thinking that staff might go and work in other venues with other partner organisations?
Well, let's take an example where you have perhaps an ability to co-locate with the police, and don't think we're going to do it yet. But if you're looking at those other agencies and accommodation therein, wouldn't you look at that? You would look at that. There's no walls, or shouldn't be Chinese walls, between these agencies saying, I'm the police and I'm the fire service and I'm the local authority. We're all the public sector providing those services. So why wouldn't we look at that as well? But again, I won't be drawn into where we think we might do it.
No, sure. I just want to get a flavour a bit more, because there's a lot of, I mean, obviously this is very early stage on this, but there's a lot of unanswered questions, and every sentence you read sparks questions in your mind about the detail. It talks, just a couple more, sorry, Leader, talks about the planning service and making best use of automation. I appreciate that use of automation is one way of making efficiencies, but we've got a paper later on about the customer journey and making sure that the residents get the service from us that they need. How can we be certain, will we put things in place to ensure that the route, going down the route to automation is not going to undermine the service that we give to residents?
I'm going to say what I was going to say on that paper you've just referred to. What I think is missing in all of our digital connection with our residents is what I've been used to for many, many years, which I call user acceptance testing. And where there is a panel of ordinary people who are not whiz kids on IT, who actually go through and check all of our digital interfaces and check that it can be used without, somewhat intuitively, but quite easily. So in any change where we introduce automation, I'm determined that we introduce proper user acceptance testing and put a panel together of people who want to come forward and like the challenge of actually trying something, breaking it, and then we fix it before it goes live. And that hasn't been done enough.
Okay, thank you.
So I hope that gives you some assurance.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And just one final question. I think you mentioned this earlier, an employer value proposition. Are you able to explain to us what that actually is? Is it just a sort of statement of intent and values and ethics? Or
Why would
is
you
it?
come and work?
You can talk for hours on it, Councillor.
Why would you come and work for this authority?
Hmm.
Why would you? Do you know?
So is it
Because I
basically
don't
like
at
a
the moment.
state?
So that is what we need.
Yeah.
We need the elevator pitch, the USP that says this authority has this to offer, and this is why you should come and work it, because it's a brilliant place to work. And there's a referral scheme. You got me going now, I'm sorry. There's a referral scheme for staff to introduce people to come and work here. Did we know that? It's not, it's been, the light's been held under a flipping bushel on that, and we're going to promote that as well. But how do we promote it if we don't know why they should want to come here? So there's so much to be done. I'm so excited. You've got me going here. Sorry.
All right. Thank you. That's really useful. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Culver. Any other questions that have spurned from that debate? No. Excellent. Okay. And as I said, that doesn't require a vote, as the recommendations are for members just to note. So we move on then to item 9, which is the results of the public consultation for the potential sports pitch at Manor Park. Councillor Lewis, to introduce the report, and then Councillor Lewis, if you happy to propose that report, and I'll second it from the chair for ease. So over to you to introduce it, please.
Thank you. So with play pitch strategy, variety of places were looked at, and one of the options was Manor Park. Within the consultation for that, the residents were quite strong in making sure this didn't go ahead for a variety of reasons, such as the biodiversity of the area, the way the ground lies, public nuisance. There's no toilet facility and there isn't a toilet block there. So it's going to have to be an awful lot of money put into this. So the recommendation is not for it to go ahead, for the project to be stopped, and the costs to be put across other play pitch strategy prioritised places. So the recommendation is for it not to go ahead and to explore other sport pitches.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Do any members of the executive have any comments or questions? No. Opposition colleagues? Councillor McKinnon first, please.
I've got a couple, please, Leader. So reading through this report, it struck me that it seems to be written in the context that the sports hub may still be on the table. So just in paragraph 1, right up front, it says in the context of the sports hub, 12.6, if the sports hub was developed, an alternative location for a new sports pitch would need to be identified. Now, as Councillor Marsh has said already, we've recently learned that the chairman of Newbury Rugby Club recently met with you, Leader, and he says that you told him the sports hub was dead. But this report seems to suggest that may not be the case. So my first question is, well, which is it? Is it dead or is it not? But just something struck me earlier on when you, Leader, correctly, in my view, told Mr. Morgan that Councillor Lewis couldn't prejudge an executive decision before it had been made. But I put it to you that haven't you done just that in your conversations with the chairman of the rugby club?
Okay, I'm happy to answer that. I said subject to the executive, and that's the position the executive will be looking to work along. But until it's approved by the executive, it's not the position of the council. I mean, Councillor McKinnon, there's lots that we need to unravel around this. The playing pitch strategy itself, its number one priority is that a football ground goes to Monk's Lane, which is why we need to put the playing pitch strategy back out to consultation to get that removed as a primary objective, which then releases the need that you created to put the sports hub in place, which also then negates the need for Manor Park. So I've been absolutely clear with the rugby club that as the leader, that's my view, but that I have to take it through the executive. And until there's formal approval at the executive, clearly the previous administration's commitments are still duty bound on this council.
Can I just make a point?
No, sorry, Councillor Morgan. No, Councillor Morgan, there is no Councillor Morgan. Councillor Morgan.
Not Councillor Lee.
Yeah, okay, but Councillor, yeah, okay, but there's no Councillor Morgan. There is no Councillor Morgan. Okay.
Leader, thank you for that answer, Leader.
You interrupt me again, you have to leave the chamber. We've had the public questions. I misspoke and I apologise for misspeaking. Yes, what I'm saying is that the decisions of the previous administration need to be unwound through the executive cycle. We have got a paper coming in November, which will tackle that. But it's also absolutely quite clear that there's a political mandate to cancel the sports hub because it was in our manifesto. And so there is no concern in my mind that my executive won't back me as the leader to see the deletion of the sports hub at Monks Lane. And I would hope that my members of my executive will back me when that comes to the next meeting of the executive. I'm confident that they will. And then from that, we can unravel the mess that the Conservatives made of Faraday Road. Thank you.
It's a shame that you made that last comment. I was sort of with you all the way. It just struck me as inconsistent, that, you were at pains to point out that Councillor Lewis couldn't to Mr. Morgan, but well, look, you've answered the question and I thank you for the answer. My second question on this one in 12.6, I quote, if the sports hub, no, beg your pardon, 11.2, I'm not quoting very well, 11.2, the playing pitch strategy has placed strong emphasis on increasing the number of artificial grass pitches, primarily due to their vastly superior capacity to accommodate training and matches compared to a grass sports pitch. Okay, fair enough, I'm on board with that. Why then are you wasting a load of officer time and taxpayers' money putting in a grass pitch at Faraday Road, when by the report's own words, that will be vastly inferior to the 3G pitch that would have been put in at the sports hub?
So if I can just answer that in a basic way, we're at phase 1, and that was to return football to Faraday Road. So the easiest and quickest way of doing that was to return it to grass pitch. Phase 2 will look at other suggestions.
I guess one final one, Leader, if I may. Why not just go the whole hog and start with a 3G pitch then? If it's going to be vastly superior, you'll sort of get from A to C a lot quicker without stopping at B, which is vastly inferior.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, please. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tom. Okay. Sorry. So in terms of the grass pitch, then, Councillor McKinnon, the state of repair that grass was left in made the cost even higher because it wasn't properly maintained by the previous administration as an open space. You wouldn't be able to, when we went there, the grass was so long that you wouldn't even be able to have a picnic there. So it's quite clear that the previous administration had let it just go to rot. And we have had to spend money on getting that grass pitch back up into use, more than we would have liked to if we'd had a responsible administration previously looking after those community assets. And they weren't looked after. That is quite clear. It wasn't looked after, hence why the level of work that was required on it. But if we went straight to 3G pitch, it would take even longer to get some football up and running. And we wanted to get football up and running back at Faraday Road ASAP. And that's what doing the grass pitch enables. And then there will be the second phase, as Councillor Lewis said, around the 3G pitch and what other sports need to be hosted at that ground. We're consulting with them. We've held our first community forum. Ideas are progressing. So actually, it's about working with the community about what they need at that sports ground rather than just implementing it straight off. And our approach allows for that to happen in a phased manner.
Okay, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of the previous administration this, the previous administration that, and I understand the temptation for you guys to do that. Look, you're in charge now. You need to own the situation that you've got in. And it just seems to me daft to put a grass pitch in there when you're going to rip it up in due course and put a 3G one in there. But
okay,
I've said my piece.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon, Councillor McKinnon. Any other questions from the Conservative front bench, first of all? No, Councillor Marsh, please.
Thanks. Right. Well, I mean, I know that in a way, Manor Park was just a sort of blackly comic sideshow to the tragedy of the whole Monks Lane, Faraday Road fiasco. But I just want to say, first of all, thank you to Mr. Martindale for the report. It's an excellent report and the Green councillors strongly support it. And I just want to seek an assurance from someone on the executive or the council leader that the lessons have been learnt from this absolute fiasco, which you've been remarkably restrained actually in your comments about. So with a plan, as I understand it, was to spend £500,000 on a completely unsuitable location for a replacement, for the replacement that wasn't actually a replacement. Because Sport England rightly decided that the replacement was not an adequate replacement for Faraday Road. Now, as soon as this plan was mooted, everyone, the Coldash Parish Council, which is where the pitch is, the Newbury Town Council, the Green Party, the Liberal Democrats, and above all, as we've seen from the consultation, overwhelmingly the majority of local people pointed out all the shortcomings of this site. It's on a slope, it gets waterlogged, and there are oil pipes in the middle of it. It's ridiculous that this was ever even considered. And what a waste. Councillor McKinnon talks about waste of officers' time and stuff. What a waste of an officer's time to have to produce this comprehensive report, concluding what we all knew from the start. It's, quote, very high cost and does not represent good value for money. And then just to put the icing on the cake, just to finish, halfway through the election campaign, the two Conservative candidates for Newbury Clay Hill, having finally worked out that it was unpopular, announced that the thing had been dropped, which of course it hadn't been, because it's only being hopefully put to bed now. I mean, what a way to run a council. So please assure me that in future, when a project like this is being considered, that you will listen to people, because they didn't listen. And, you know, just don't spend months and months and a great deal of money producing reports that we did not need, because everyone could see, everyone apart from a few members of the administration who were trying to save face, everyone could see this by producing another ground out of a hat from somewhere, which, as I say, Councillor Bowitt, we could all see was a really daft idea, and that you won't do anything like that in future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll let Councillor Lewis answer the question, Councillor Marsh, but I'd say here.
Councillor Marsh, thank you. Refreshing to hear such wonderful words. Yes, you get my assurance. I think you're going to get the assurance of everybody else. We've invited other people to come forward with suggestions of where else we could put the pitches. It's a big ask, I know, but we have got a rather large county area, borough to look at. There's an east and a west, a north and a south. We don't have to just concentrate in Newbury and around that area. So we are making sure that it's being looked at in the whole of the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so any other comments or questions? No. So this was proposed by Councillor Lewis, seconded by me. The recommendation is to not progress with a planning application for the creation of a sports pitch at the Manor Park site, and to explore alternative locations for the creation of new sports pitches. Executive members, see in favour of that recommendation, please. Excellent, thank you, that's carried. Item 10 is community forums. Councillor Vickers, pleased to present and introduce the report, and as the recommendations included are for members to note, there is no need to vote on this item.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I was very pleased once I got my head around what it meant that you'd invited me to be the portfolio holder for community engagement as well as planning. It does make sense. I'm proud of the way in which the planning service has operated under both parties ever since I was first elected back in the old district council days in 1995. I think we are exemplary in the way that we involve the community to the best of our ability and within the limited resources that we have, which I've already referred to. So I think it fits well with planning because people care about their place. They don't often have applications coming to their immediate neighborhood, and so it needs a lot of explanation. It's a complicated process full of potential pitfalls with very well-heeled developers taking on the council. So I draw your attention to Appendix A, which says it was under the Liberal Democrats in the year 2000 that we brought in area forums. I have to admit it wasn't a great success. We sort of felt each meeting had to be done. not necessarily because there was a bottom-up pressure to discuss and be heard on a particular issue. And I think that's the key. We have to be listening right from the start to the communities, whether they're communities of interest or geographic communities, to find out what needs to be listened to and who needs to be assembled to form a panel to take on board what people want, and then to fit that into where our strategy is. So that's what we're doing. We had the first one of these on the Faraday Road issue, which Councillor Lewis very ably chaired. And I think all of us who were on the panel, officers and members, felt that was a great success. So moving on, I can announce today that the next community forum, by popular demand, both from members and the parish councils and other stakeholders we've spoken to, will be what's called on country matters. And it was interesting that the column called Country Matters by the well-known expert in these things, Andrew Davis, came to its end last Thursday, sadly. I've always gone straight to that. Well, not straight. I look at the letters page first, don't we all, as politicians? But the next page I always turn to is Country Matters. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. We haven't set a date. We haven't chosen a venue. I have written informally to the Newbury and District Agricultural Society, because obviously they are a key stakeholder in Country Matters. I looked out for people to speak to at the show on last Saturday, which I greatly enjoyed and was much more about our community in West Berkshire than it used to be. So we will hold for a year, but we will work hard at choosing the right topics for the right time in the right place. They won't all be in this building, in this chamber, and the next one will definitely be taken out to the rural areas. And we would invite topics from all members on all sides of the council and from every member of the public or interest group. We would expect to see topics that are related to our strategy, which you'll see revised at the next full council. What more need I say? I've drawn your attention to Appendix A. Appendix B sets out the terms of reference. Appendix C is specifically on the first of the forums, and Appendix 4 shows you that this is not a new thing across local government. There are many councils that are doing this sort of thing. Many of them are Liberal Democrat, I'm proud to say, but not all. And the final point to draw attention, it's interesting in the report in Annex A that back in 2008, before we were quite so familiar with the digital and online world, there was a recommendation to look at the potential for virtual forums. Well, we will definitely make them all hybrid this time. We want people to come. Some people haven't got the ability either technically or because of broadband to do online. So they will be hybrid. And I'm looking forward to being in charge of taking this forward. And thank
you very much, Councillor Vickers. Excellent. Thank you. Comments from members of the executive. Councillor Brooks.
Well, I'm absolutely delighted that we've got this going, got it going so quickly. And thank you to Councillor Vickers for that. I don't want to get into a history lesson, Councillor Vickers, but actually I was the chairman of the Eastern Area Forum up to 2000, and it was a huge success, sir. So you may have had a poor experience. I didn't. But let's think about what they are here to achieve, these forums. You get out into the community, you ask people to come along and discuss an issue that is pertinent to this district. And over time, they will come regularly and give us advice, guidance, and help us in another way transform certain services, because you're calling on those people to come and give us their expertise, their view, their experience. And how do you do that in the bubble of this council unless you get out there around the district and these become well established? I'm delighted to see it happen so quickly. Long time coming.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Any questions or comments opposite? Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, just thanks for those comments, by the way, folks. Just looking at the report, so 4.1, it says that following the successful event on the 17th of August, quick starter for 10. By what measure are you considering it successful? Councillor Vickers.
Sometimes you can't measure things. I know you're an accountant and you like measuring everything, otherwise it really doesn't matter. But there are things that do matter that can't be counted. There was definitely the right feel, I think all of us who attended, and the feedback we got from those who do attend, was that they really valued the way it had been conducted. I mean, there were some positive ideas put forward to how to improve them in future. But it wasn't. We didn't feel like one sometimes does as a councillor, that we're in the stocks as members and officers and people are throwing things at us. It was a constructive, and it was useful to us, and I think it was useful to those who attended. So by what measure? I really don't have an answer, but we felt that it was a success.
That's fine. It was an intangible thing. You could feel it. Good. Now, the topic was sports provision Faraday Road. Now, even tonight, we've heard, lots of residents have been engaged with this issue for a long time. Members of the Newbury Community Football Group, for example, and several residents who regularly ask questions at public meetings at Executive and Council. Aside from those residents and members of the council, how many residents actually took part in the forum? How much more engagement was achieved compared to that which already existed on this rather hot topic?
I can answer that. I certainly, one of the more active people in the audience who did ask questions and engage with the subject was not from Newbury and not interested in football, and seemed to have come along just to see how these forums were going to work. I agree. I would admit that I would have liked more ordinary residents, if you like, but it's only to be expected, I think, on any subject, that people have got other things to do with their evenings, quite frankly. And unless you are interested in the topic that's been chosen, and you know that there is a decision that the council genuinely needs to make, and it's just not going through the motions because it has to tick a box, we've consulted, then I think you would always expect the people who really seriously want to contribute to that decision to be present.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor McKinnon, before you come in, I think Councillor Colston and Councillor Lewis also want to probably provide some answers to that last question.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So I'd just like to say, so we said it was a community forum about a sporting stadium or bringing some kind of community sports facility rather to Faraday Road. And we had a representative from Newbury Velo Cycling Club to see what, if anything, could be done to cater for their needs as we go forward thinking about the development. And that's the kind of thing that we're trying to encourage, is to get wider participation, so we learn about things that we might not have otherwise considered. Thank you.
And Councillor Lewis, maybe similar, but
it is similar. I loved there were three members in the audience who had nothing to do with football. One of them was a lady who said she's not interested in football or sport, but she wants to know where she could go to do other activities. So she was pressed further to say what sort of activities, and she did say something along the lines of knitting or crocheting. So it's really about the engagement of interest. What leisure facilities do people want? It doesn't always have to be about fitness. We also had some unusual input from another well-known person within our forums and these meetings, when it was suggested she would love to have a boat on a boating lake. So again, people were coming up with quite creative, innovative ideas. So that was the other thing that we could comment on in the way it was a success. It wasn't just about football.
Okay, thank you, and Leader, thanks for the collegiate answer. That's
I answer, yeah.
That's much appreciated. I'm not sure I had a number amongst that, and you may not have it to hand, but Councillor Vickers, I'll sort of press you for an exact number, or I can check. I could probably check the Zoom records myself if that's not possible.
We did keep a record of who attended.
If you could get back to me at some point, that'd be lovely. One other, I just wanted to touch also on there's a section in the report about EAG, I apologise to every listener to this for using the acronym. It's Environment Advisory Group. But the EAG Open Forum. Now, I understand that Councillor Abs isn't in the room tonight. And I don't think he would argue that, we as the administration listened to him for 4 years arguing for, full transparency, particularly of EAG. It was a particular concern of his. Now, reading the report at 5:15, the EAG Open Forum, the public aren't invited to this. Instead, interest groups are invited on, I would imagine, the portfolio holder's discretion. And then the recording of the forum is then made available. And I'm not sure that's full transparency. And I've got a specific question. Councillor Abs may have known the answer. I don't know if you guys will, but that recording that was released on YouTube, was that edited at all before release? Or was it the full proceedings, warts and all? That's one question. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Councillor Vickers, but EAG proper will still meet and still be confidential. So confidential updates and discussions will still take place. That's the phrase that's used in the reading, in the report. So my question is, who decides what is confidential and what isn't?
Can I answer that, Leader? Yeah,
please do.
It is still a group that advises the portfolio holder. The portfolio holder ex officio is the chair of the meeting, and the chair rightly decides who should be appropriately invited in order to manage his meeting as best as possible. It's quite open who wants to apply, but it does go through a sort of scrutiny, as I understand it. You have to be genuinely able to add value, if you like, it's felt, to the discussion that will inform him as the portfolio holder. I can't answer to say whether the recording was edited before it was made public. I don't know that. I do know that the way forward is that there will be a part one and a part two. So if you like it, you could say that the part two is the proper EAG. But although there aren't too many confidential matters brought up, because we all have a lot to learn about how to manage climate emergency and biodiversity and all those sorts of things. But there will be occasionally some commercially in confidence matters, and I imagine that's why there's a part two.
Councillor McKinnon, we understand that the recording was edited. We'll get back to you with the reason for that from the monitoring officer. So I don't want to misspeak on it.
That's fine. No, so hopefully, Leader, you can see why I'm asking the question, and we're not playing games or anything here. It's if it's full transparency we're looking for, that's why I'm asking the question. I think it sounds like it's the portfolio holder who decides what goes into the part one and the part two proceedings, and it's the portfolio holder that's able to decide what information is released into the public domain. I would put it to you that is no change from the previous situation where we had a part two meeting, and it was up to the portfolio holder to disclose what went on in that meeting. I just think people who've been listening to Councillor Abs for 4 years might be disappointed that that's as far as it's gone.
Okay. I mean, I think the fact that recordings of the meetings are made public is something that didn't happen in the previous 4 years for any EAG meetings. The report, so for example, there was a consultant that I think was hired under the previous administration talking about bin collections. Now that might be something that will set hairs running, but actually we believe in a mature adult discussion. So that was in the public domain. It caused potentially us some negative headlines, but actually it was about having an open and honest debate about how you best get to net zero. So we were happy for it to be in the public domain, even though it may have been seen to have caused us some difficulties. And I think that might be the difference between approach. We don't shy away from difficult conversations, and we're happy for members of the public to see those discussions as long as they don't breach into the confidential and commercial world, of course. Thanks. Any other questions, Councillor McKinnon?
No, that's all. That's all. Thanks, Leader. I just make a plea.
Go on.
Try and get through an answer tonight without mentioning the previous administration. I dare you.
Well, I know, but Councillor McKinnon, you
that's what residents expect. You guys are in charge.
comparing us to your approach, which you said it's no different to our approach. Well, I'm sorry, it is different. And so I need to reference the previous administration. I did that in a completely non-political way there, but just saying the previous administration took a different approach to it. And that is a matter of fact, I'm afraid. So there are going to be times when we need to draw the differences of approach out, particularly when your question asks to compare approaches.
No, not in every answer. Come on.
Any other questions from members? Councillor Culver, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. The Green Group very much support this. During the last administration, sorry, I've mentioned it, we were very much in favour of making the three advisory groups open. It would be interesting to know whether there are any plans to make the planning and the transport advisory groups open at some point in time. I think the problem with this is you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. The meeting was good. There were members of the public there who were not representatives of organisations. They were just ordinary members of the public who were online. And the feedback that I got from them was that they very much enjoyed the meeting, the open forum. We had presentations from Roger Honeyman about hydroelectric. We had a presentation from a local entrepreneur about pollution monitors. And as the leader has just mentioned, the waste strategy. As a former journalist, I think it's kind of inevitable if you watch something like that, you're going to pick up on something that's going to make a headline. But, you know, as the leader has said, that you just have to roll with that, unfortunately. And there was a lot of negative coverage on Facebook about the bin charges as well. But, you know, that will go out to public consultation. So people will have an opportunity to have their say. But as I say, we very much support the community forums and the openness of the advisory groups as well. I know a couple of our Conservative colleagues here this evening were in the community forum as well. They might like to say whether or not they found it constructive. I think the room was nearly full. I watched it on Zoom, and as people have said, there were a lot of other voices there. There was a lady who talked a lot about cycling, for example, and not just football. And just finally, on the Country Matters topic, Councillor Vickers, it might be quite interesting to involve landowners and farmers in that, as I'm sure you will do, because they're obviously interesting issues that are getting debated at the moment around nature recovery networks and food security and so on. So if we could get a little bit more detail as time goes by as to what the exact focuses of those might be. I know there are landowners and farmers in my ward and in neighbouring wards who I'm sure would be very, very interested in this because of those topics. And BBOUT's got a meeting soon at Sheepdrove where they'll be talking about the link between farming, food security, biodiversity, etc. So if we are having similar discussions like that, I think that's very positive.
Thank you, Councillor Culver. Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, a couple of things I'd like to come back on. Firstly, what about PAG and TAG, to use the acronym words? I can't speak for Transport Advisory Group because Councillor McCrow, who chairs it, I think is... Sorry, you're here. Well, maybe Councillor Gaines can... Sorry, I'm so used to Councillor Alan McCrow. Where is he? He's not here, is he? Oh, there he is.
Come on, Tony.
Yeah. Anyway, for Planning Advisory Group, while we're going through the local plan review, there is really too much that's sensitive and commercially in confidence, and it would be really unwise to make public. And unfortunately, no sooner have you finished one local plan than you're starting another one. I would like to go into the part one, part two mode, and I do think there will be occasions where we can perhaps invite speakers or consider it. So it's in the back of my mind that we should try and move in that direction. But at the moment, everything is really focused on, well, almost everything. We had PAG this morning and it wasn't all about the local plan, but it was mainly. So I think I haven't got basically the capacity myself nor have my officers to work up how we could make PAG open.
Okay.
On the second point, which was Country Matters, I would accept any ideas about what should be in that scope. It could be an extremely broad scope, but one thing I think we should exclude, we already have a rural business forum, which is basically run by Councillor Colston, which deals with the major landowners, where you have an independent owner farmer or other farmers, certainly farmers, and what somebody in your ward, actually, Councillor McKinnon, called real country people who work in the countryside. I think we need to have those people who are not necessarily the same as the estate owners and the land managers.
Okay, thank you. And I think, it's our intention, Councillor Culver, to be as open as possible on all forums. So when the opportunities arise, whether it be PAG or TAG, as the leader, I'll be asking my executive portfolio holders to make sure that it's as open as it can be. Thanks. Okay, any other questions on that paper? Councillor Stewart.
I don't want to delay it all, but as Councillor Culver suggested, I was one of the people that was in the forum, and I did give my feedback to Councillor Lewis. But just for public record, really, I thought it was very interesting. It's the first one that I've been to. The subject was there was a lot of passion in the room, obviously, but I thought, as mentioned, it was good that it was. In fact, I think Councillor Lewis did a great job in chairing that. And trying to deal with those who wanted to drag it down a political route, when actually what it was there to do was for the community to talk about what they needed. And there were some great people in there. I think from a ward member's perspective, the Country Matters one, bearing in mind I'm in Tarlas Birch Copse, I don't want to assume that my residents might not want to attend, because they may be very interested. If I can, I will attend as well, because I want to see one of the forums in action where it's not potentially got a political connotation to it. So actually a true everybody talking about the things that that they're very passionate about, the issues and the challenges that they've got where they live. And I also really welcome the opportunity to be able to put forward some ideas too. So I will be going back to my parish councils and residents to see if they can come up with some topics that would really switch them on as well.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart, for those comments. I think for those who have got urban wards, it's really important to remember access to the countryside. And actually, what do they need to be able to enjoy the beautiful countryside that we've got surrounded? And then one other thing that isn't actually in the report, so we were saying 4 a year West Berkshire themes, so covering the whole district. But actually, if there is an issue that's affecting one region of West Berkshire, so maybe out in the west, it only affects 3 or 4 wards, or out in the east, you've got a large concentration of population in a tight area of wards, it might be appropriate that we do a community forum aimed at wards A, B, C, D, and E. To tackle an issue that might be coming up there as well. So please, any suggestions, ping them into Tony, and we'll work out the best way of engaging the community on them. Okay, that didn't require a vote, so I'm going to move us now over to item 11, which is the response to what was the Overview and Scrutiny Management Commission Task and Finish Group, and this is for Councillor Brooks, please. And Councillor Brooks, will you propose this?
I'm very happy to propose this.
Thank you, and I'll second it from the chair, and over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Earlier this year, cross-party, this customer task and finish group for the customer journey was undertaken. I can't remember all the members on it. I know Councillor Abbs was on it, and it resulted in the landscape pages of recommendations start on page 169. Before I'm asked the question, even anticipating questions that might not be asked here, but we've had a good look at this and looked at all of the recommendations since taking over the administration and said, does it go far enough? Do we want to reopen it in any way? And we decided to bring it in its present form with its present recommendation, because quite a few of those they were getting on with. So to me, this is not an end. It's a part of a journey. There's a lot here on those landscape pages, most of which have either been accepted and complete or accepted in progress that are being cracked on with. Only yesterday, I was drawn to our website, which is a small thing, but our buttons at the top of the website now stay in the pane on the screen if you scroll down. Small but important, useful change that was in this recommendation and has been carried out. So with 1 or 2 things that are not being progressed at this time doesn't mean they'll never be progressed. That report provides a lot of ways forward. I mentioned earlier I wanted to add user acceptance testing in, where we launch a new web-based interface. And I commend it because I think we need to do all of these things, but we also need to look on a constant basis at what needs to be added to this work, and we will be doing so. So that's my introduction, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Any comments or questions from members of the executive? No. Councillor Carr, I was going to come to you first, Councillor Culver, as Chair of Scrutiny, actually. I think it's more appropriate. So over to you.
Thank you very much. I think I'm the only person in the room who was on that task group, actually. It did meet 12 times, as it says in the agenda pack, and that's not something that I hope that we ever repeat in the future, because it was a pretty epic task. But former Councillor James Cole did do a very good job of chairing that, and also Councillor Abbs and Councillor B were involved in that as well. So thank you for this. As Councillor Brooks has said, a lot of the things are already underway. I know that the report of problem page is very popular. It says in here on page 177 that the current report of problem page will be retired in the next couple of months. Are you able to give us a bit more detail about how that might work? At the moment, we've got a very simple URL that I know councillors have been promoting to their residents to use. So could you reassure me that we will continue with that simple approach so that people know exactly where they need to go? And I know that the IT team has been improving that page with the different boxes you can click, the different kind of problems you might have. So it's pretty, straightforward. And then on page 181.
Take that one before I forget it.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure that members are able to look at the new report of problem system, use it, understand it.
Good.
And you might even want to be on my user acceptance testing panel. But we will make sure that you, as members, cross-party, say that's an improvement.
Yeah.
Because if it isn't, I don't know what we're spending the money on.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that reassurance. And then just on page 181 about the production of British Sign Language videos and about the fact that they're commercially sourced and not sufficient capacity within the council to do that ourselves. I just want to raise the fact I have been speaking to members of the deaf and blind community. And I know that, not all deaf people use British Sign Language. I do think there might be a piece of work to look at how we support people with disabilities. So I just want to raise awareness of that. It's not just a British Sign Language issue. I do think we have a fundamental problem with how we communicate with people from the deaf and blind community. So if that's something that the administration could keep in their minds when doing the, proceeding with this, that would be very positive, I think.
Certainly will. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor McKinnon next.
Thanks, Leader. And actually just piggybacking off something that Councillor Carver just said there about recommendation 25 on British Sign Language, the recommendation or the comment is that it's not going to be progressed at this time to create the easy to read versions of documents and videos about council services. And as has just been said, the capacity in the service isn't there, but these resources can be commercially sourced. And I just don't think it's clear from there whether they will be or not. So I just wonder if Councillor Brooks could comment on that.
I think we will keep that at the forefront of our mind in this, Councillor McKinnon. We are wrestling with a very, very significant financial challenge, huge. And as soon as we feel that that is abating and we have a grip on the ways that we spend money, that is more efficient, and that we have borne down on the pressures, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be returning to this, Councillor McKinnon. But we simply have to solve a major problem first, sir.
Good stuff. Thanks, Councillor Brooks. And actually, just building on that, my last one from me, recommendation 37 is commented as under investigation, but this is the recommendation to regularly promote the service where residents can register to be notified of planning applications and use an e-newsletter to tell people about planning issues and applications. Now, that is surely the way forward for this thorny issue of neighbour notification letters. Would it not be better, Councillor Brooks or Vickers, to do it this way than I think what many people see as a retrograde step proposed by the administration, which is the hand delivery or otherwise of paper letters by hand? So I would urge you to focus on that one rather than the planning officers having to play postman Pat.
Well, I knocked on a lot of doors. I'm sure you did as well, and I was surprised I'm surprised at the number of people who really do not access the internet. and are not going to. They just don't feel they have the capability to do so, and all the training in the world will not get them over that. So while I get very anxious about the digital exclusion, where we say, look, isn't that easy? Isn't that suitable? Isn't that cheap? Paper still has a part to play for the foreseeable future, Councillor McKinnon, as does the snail mail, which people still appreciate.
Thank you. And then Councillor Vickers on the letters.
Yeah, I'm aware there is a question from Councillor Sumner about the neighbour notification letters. I can assure you it's not going to be hand delivered by an officer. That is not the method we're going for. In general terms, I would have liked to highlight this under a previous item on the transformation programme, because one of I think the most exciting of the 6 projects is the Place Directorate area, where we will be maximising the use of digital technology, but not forgetting about those, as Councillor Brooks has said, who cannot or will not readily use those methods. But I think there is great potential for a better and a more efficient service that costs less.
Thank you very much. Councillor McKinnon, any other questions or comments? No? Okay. Councillor Stewart, please.
I've spoken a lot tonight. It's not like me at all. I was going to say 2 things, but I'm very, Councillor Bridgman, 2 things. I'm really pleased to hear that talking about digital inclusion and exclusion, I don't think Councillor Lewis will mind if I say that she and I are already embarking on something as part of the Mental Health Action Group. We're just dipping our toe in the water at the moment. And of course, we will make sure that, or certainly Councillor Lewis will make sure that her colleagues know where that work is going. And I'm really pleased with that. I have residents who will not ever use the internet, and actually at the moment they use me instead. So if there's a way to get around that, I'd really like that. And then the other thing is something else that I'm really interested in. It's item 30. So it sort of ticks both of my boxes, the adult social care, and also it mentions the Eastern area, which we don't always mention the Eastern area. And actually, I know it's low priority and it's under investigation, but I would put a heartfelt plea in there for certainly the members, and there are other people in this room who have residents that live in the East, having something where they will feel that they have been listened to, that they can go and talk to somebody, perhaps if it's a high street presence, will be so beneficial. And it will be, they will be, really, really pleased with that, because you do still very often hear, well, what about us in the East? So I'd be really interested to hear how that turns out. And if you need anybody on your user acceptance testing as well, Councillor Brooks, I'm your girl.
Just come back to say, Councillor Lewis mentions the East all the time. She is the Jiminy Cricket on the shoulder of the executive as far as the East is concerned, Councillor Stewart.
But thank you for those comments, Councillor Stewart. I'm sure Councillor Macro, as ASC portfolio holder, will keep those in mind, as will Mr. Coe. Okay, any other comments or questions on this one from anybody? No. Okay, so this was proposed by Councillor Brooks. It was seconded by me and the chair. And it's to resolve that we agree the proposed action plan that's been developed in response to the recommendations raised by the Task and Finish Group. And can I just also put on record my thanks to former Councillor Cole for the chairing of that Task and Finish Group. Executive members in favour of the resolution, please. Thank you. Item 12 is response to the Overview and Scrutiny Management Commission Task and Finish Group on fees and charges. Councillor Cottingham is still with us under fading light, maybe, or a desert sun now, it looks quite like here. Given that Councillor Brooks was on this committee, or on the task group, Councillor Brooks is going to move the report.
Thank you.
And are you happy to propose that?
I'm proposing.
Lovely, and I will second that. Excellent.
Yeah, but I did sit on this with Councillor Linden as the chair. And as you can see on the landscape pages from page 203 onwards, the first thing we wanted to do was to understand the fees and charges a great deal better. Why were some being put up by 10% and others by 2%? How many units of that service were sold? There was no backing information for us to understand the rationale on any increases that were proposed. And you'll see on page 203, 204, quite a lot of in the next budget round, we'll get a lot more information on this. So we can see why we're making those changes. So that was one thing that we wanted to do. We wanted to push back. Leisure fees and charges, I think that's an ongoing piece of work, and particularly with our new contractor. And we're putting a marker down there to continue to review those on a regular basis and see what the new provider, with you, Councillor Lewis, are recommending. Then there was fees and charges and income potential from schools within our estate and also within academy. And that's set out quite well, very well on page 207. And we also talked about income streams. I think there is a need to focus here in the council, not as a result of this report, Leader, but I don't see a focus yet on commercialisation. We mentioned something in the fees and charges about could we advertise around the perimeter of the Hennickworthy sports field, as you see at a football match and whatever. That is in here, but actually it's not scratching the surface. We've got to have a commercialisation programme. We have a marketing manager. We've got to look at a market management lead. We've got to look at how can we generate other streams of income. And this is a start point on that, but not an end point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Any other comments or questions from members of the executive? No. Members opposite? Councillor McKinnon first. Sorry, your boss has got his hand up.
No, that's, do you know what? I wasn't going to comment on this. I just wanted to come back on what Councillor Brooks said there about commercialisation. We did, and I'm going to talk about the previous administration, Leader. We did have a commercial board in the last term looking at exactly this. You know, we did have a focus. I wish you every success with a focus on commercialisation. It is difficult to do. And if there's anything I can do to help, please give me a ring.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. Councillor Brooks.
If I may come back on that, I think I definitely will take you up on your offer. I've been involved in that in other places like the Fire Authority, and it ain't easy, is it, Councillor McKinnon? But that don't mean you don't stop trying. Would the work you did on it be documented, sir, that we might have access to? Do you know?
It was a board, much like ops board, you know, property investment board. So yeah, it was a semi-formal, non-public board. So I'm certain it will be.
And I'd ask through you, Leader, to Nicola Thomas, maybe we could look those papers up and get them in our inbox, please.
Lovely. I think it's been a long term. I remember Councillor Hilary Cole in 3 administrations back, you know, trying to say, can we get a commercialisation team stood up at the council? So yeah, let's see how we can progress as a council on that. And again, any ideas for commercialisation of services, greatly appreciated. Councillor McKinnon, is that you finished on that item, sir? Yeah, Councillor Bowick.
Thank you. A specific point, line item number 4, where it says investigate the business case for investing in local leisure centres, and the comment relates really only to the Lido and North Crop Leisure Centre. So no mention of investing in any of the much more local leisure facilities that we have around the district.
No, and I mean that was the recommendation out of the report. But I think you're right, Councillor Bowick. It should go further than what it said. Obviously, these are just recommendations from at the time OSMC. It's down to the executive to choose whether to adopt them or not. And I think item 4 should be looking at the whole leisure portfolio, not just those named sites. Any other questions or comments? No. Okay, so that's been proposed by Councillor Brooks, seconded by myself. And this is to agree again the proposed action plan that's been developed in response to the recommendations, subject to line number 4, including all leisure centres, not just those named. Does that see favour with exec members, please? Okay, just go. Tony is with us. There we go. Okay, moving on to item 13. This is the amendments to the Public Protection Partnerships Inter-Authority Agreement. I don't think I've ever worked so hard to try and get opposition members onto a body. But members will know that I spoke about this at full council when we appointed members to the JPPC. I then explained about the governance cycle that it needs to go through. So this is now with us, so that we approve that the service lead for delegated for legal and dem services in consultation with the service lead for public protection be authorised to make the amendment to the inter-authority agreement to reflect the decisions of this council. And I'm happy to say Bracknell Forest Borough Council, who also supported my call to make it more open to opposition members. I believe it is a Conservative member that's being proposed from Bracknell Forest. So that is proposed by myself, seconded by Councillor Brooks. Any questions from the executive? Any questions from opposite?
Excellent. Say we fully support it, Leader.
Yeah, good. Thank you. And can I see then from executive those in favour to give the delegated authority? Thank you. That's carried. Okay, and at 7:25, I move us on to item 14, members' questions. Question A has since been withdrawn, and in the absence of the portfolio holder for climate action, recycling and biodiversity, written responses will be given to answers K and N. So can I ask that Councillor Gaines answers question B from Councillor McKinnon, please?
Thank you, Leader. Thank you for your question, Councillor McKinnon. You made a very provocative statement in your question. If you really don't know the answer to that, I would happily enlighten you after this session. However, to your actual question, yes, I am happy to meet you on site, though I cannot promise an immediate resolution, as I understand that the Three Firs Way, Burfield, doesn't form part of the current highway improvement programme for 23, 24, 25, 26. The photographs that were supplied to highways show that the main issue seems to be surface lamination of an old slurry material, which would not normally meet the council's current investigative levels. The underlying concrete appears to be structurally sound. Nonetheless, I will ask officers to consider including the whole estate, the Three Firs Way, Brocus, and I hope I pronounced that properly, and Normal, for surface treatment, including the footways, as part of the review of the next 3 years highway improvement programme. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Gaines, for that answer. And yeah, look, I'm glad that you're going to come out to see it with me. I promise I'll be nice and bring some tea and biscuits. And the reason I'm glad that you're going to come is because the photographs, they really don't do it justice, actually. And if you have a little wander, it's not a huge estate's probably the wrong word, but if you have a wander around, there's just a bit of an air of shabbiness and neglect with it. So thank you for that answer. And I look forward to welcoming you to sunny Bradfield Ward in the near future.
Thank you. I'm actually very keen to get out to all areas within West Berkshire, because there's highways. It's all new to me, so this will be a good first attempt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We move on to question C, which is from Councillor Joe Stewart, to be answered by myself. So thank you for the question, Councillor Stewart. I've got a prepared answer here around what we do around suicide prevention, but actually, again, getting to the nuts and bolts of it. Yeah, we could have done, to be honest with you. What we're going to do going forward is we're going to bring a paper to exec with all of the world days that we think we will celebrate over the year. And then members of the executive, members of the opposition will be able to feed into that as well then and make some other suggestions. So thanks for flagging it. But what I will say just around suicide prevention, if I may, is that clearly we do provide hundreds of services to residents, which are all important in their own way. And many of these overlap with those awareness days, weeks and months. And whilst we do support them, we don't use them to drive how we deliver our services. But suicide prevention is an issue we are working on throughout the year. And we have information on our website which includes on World Suicide Prevention Awareness Day. And so I would encourage residents to take a look at the page, which can be found at westparks.gov.uk/suicide-prevention. I'll leave it at there, but thanks for raising it with us. And as I said, I'll get that exec paper with World Days, hopefully to November's exec maybe, because comms have already started doing the work on it. Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Not really, just to say thank you for that. And I do appreciate in my day job looking at all the awareness days as well. You couldn't possibly cover them all, but this was just one that I thought was quite important. So thank you for that reassurance.
No worries, thanks, and thanks for calling it out. Okay, we then move on to question D by the question by Councillor Somner to be answered by Councillor Vickers.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Sumner. We've already mentioned this subject of neighbour notification letters. We did actually come up with, following an appraisal of the various options, which was set in train immediately we took over as a new executive. We did come up with a method of doing it within 100 days. But of course, we had to go through this financial review panel, so we weren't able to actually start putting out the letters within 100 days, I do admit. But there will be a trial across the whole district. And I say it's a trial only because if you're saying it's the final version, then apparently for some policy reason, it has to be, we have to await a new publication of the, what's it called? The Statement of Community Involvement, an official planning document. But the point is, these letters will be going out across the whole district in November. And I can assure you that we estimate that the cost of this will be no more than about half of what was saved by cutting those letters in 2018. And that's through the method that we're using, which is very efficient and employing digital technology, but will end up with a letter going through the relevant letterboxes.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Somner?
Not really, and thank you for the answer. As you said, I think you've sort of covered the other points in an earlier paper. Speaking to the earlier paper, I still would raise question with you to keep a very careful watch on that cost pressure, because it is still a cost pressure, and the changes were made not only to improve the service but with costs in mind. So please do keep a very close watch on that, because I am concerned that there has been a public statement about officers driving around the district delivering letters, and we really must not stoop to that.
Thank you, Councillor.
Well, if I can deal with that, although it's not put as a question, but the fair points you put out in the options appraisal, as the officers called it, really to get people thinking, outside the box. I said, well, if all fails, get an officer to push the letters out. Now, that clearly was going to be more expensive, but unfortunately that got out as though that was going to be the answer. That's why we employ officers. They look into this properly, and they came up with a more sensible answer. But we are going to tighten the cordon, if you like, the buffer around the area a little bit. So only a 50-metre buffer generally, rather than the 100 metres that it used to be. But we're also going to be a little bit more careful, and this is where officers will come in, where it's appropriate to do neighbour notification, and it isn't for some of the more technical applications like discharge of conditions. We will have an officer look on the online map and choose those properties that are going to be affected from the map, which I think is sophisticated enough.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Vickers. Moving on, Councillor Wollaston, has he joined us online? Okay, so we'll provide Councillor Wollaston with a written answer. Move on. Move on to question F from Councillor Bowick to be answered by Councillor Codlin, please.
Thank you, Councillor Bowick, for your question. Sorry, the answer is nearly as long as the question. The Corporate Parenting Panel, CPP, meeting was moved to accommodate a scrutiny planning session between executive scrutiny members and corporate board. Members and officers were offered 2 dates. However, one would have run immediately on from an all-day budget session. So it was agreed that the 19th of September would be the preferred option. It was only later that the clash of dates with the CPP came to light, but by this time, officers had already contacted all parties to confirm the scrutiny session. Once the clash of dates was identified, officers contacted those involved in CPP, the chair and designated officers to determine whether CPP should remain in place or look for an alternative date. CPP did not appear in the corporate diary because it is not a public meeting. This has now been rectified and they are now visible for those who organise corporate meetings, thus avoiding future clashes. It is regrettable that the CPP meeting had to be moved, and we would not have settled for this date for the scrutiny session if officers had been aware the CPP was already booked. We continue to put the children in our care front and centre and do not think the change of date sends the opposite message, just that we are being flexible in our approach to what is a very busy time.
Thank you, Councillor Codling. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Berwick?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I pointed out to you, Councillor Codling, and the Leader that there was a clash before the date was confirmed. So I'm disappointed to hear that as the explanation. I think I set out in my question the importance of attendance in the CPP, and shifting at short notice a date which long been set, in my opinion, does not put children first. So I guess my plea to you, rather than a question, is every opportunity, think about how our decisions in council affect our children and young people.
Thank you, Councillor Berwick.
Yeah, absolutely. And my experience of CPP has been an effective meeting with them. It's an energetic forum, and we've had some really good, exchanges, and I'm confident that we will continue to build on that and put them front and centre.
Thank you, Councillor Codling. We move on to question G, which is from Councillor Ross McKinnon. And we still have Councillor Cottingham with us. So Councillor Cottingham, please, to answer Councillor McKinnon's question.
Thank you very much, Councillor McKinnon, for your question. And I have a very straightforward answer to your direct question. And the answer is no. Do you have a supplementary question?
Given that answer, no, I don't, Councillor Cottingham. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Somner's question H to be answered by Councillor Brooks, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I was happy with the question, but not happy with the last sentence, which I thought was an unnecessary little add-on. Have you done so, or were you simply over-promising to an election? I could take that as the substantive question and say, no, I wasn't simply over-promising to win an election. And do you have a supplement? I'm not going to do that, actually. I could have done, couldn't I? As you know, and in this chamber many times, I have berated the administration about the implementation of CIL charges to householders. I decided fairly early on that we had to have a pretty big root and branch look at all the cases going back to 2015 and what other cases might be captured by householders having got documentation incorrect. That work, as you can imagine, is highly detailed and takes time. So I make no apologies for not achieving this 100-day target, if you like, because we are doing that for review of all cases. I also promise that we will make it much easier for householders to achieve a 0 rating. And to that end, we also promised, and I put a motion down in this chamber, that we would do a review of the way that we administer CIL charges That review has been tendered. Bids have come back. I've looked at the bids. They are appointable, the bidders, but we need to do more evaluation on the scoring criteria. And so that review I expect to take place later in the year, maybe starting November and being concluded by January, February. So I'm running them in tandem, if you like, but I do hope to have progress on the charges we made, which I think were inappropriate before then.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Somner?
I do, and thank you for that response. So within that root and branch review that you're commissioning, will there be a clear requirement to define what a mistake is, and therefore who will ultimately make the decision to cancel the application? Because from what you've just said and the way that you've posed your response, it sounds like you are defining what the mistake is.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
I don't think I am per se. The review helps me. I've done a huge amount of work on how we went about collection, assessment, chasing the debt. That I'm working up into my own paper that will come through the officer cadre and ops board, and ultimately will come to executive in some shape or form. So no, I wouldn't agree I'm the arbiter. And what I've been disappointed with, and I'm sorry to take your time up here, Leader, but I've not found any process flow, standard operational procedure in the collection and assessment of SIL. Do you know what I've been sent, Councillor Sumner? The legislation. That's not a standard operational procedure, and I can't see that an officer could read 250 pages of legislation every time they want to do a SIL demand. I'm not happy with what I'm finding, I've got to tell you, and there's more work to be done to get it right.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Question I will receive a written response unless Councillor Williston's turned up. So we move to question J, Councillor Bowick's question to be answered by Councillor Gaines. I think this is another request for a visit, Councillor Gaines.
It is indeed. It is indeed. Thank you for your question, Councillor Bowick. I'm flattered that the Councillor Bowick thinks that I can achieve in 5 months what he failed to do in the preceding 3 years since the issue was brought to his attention by residents. The network management team is aware of parking issues on Mallard Way and Heron Way as a result of competition for space between residents, their visitors, and the canal users. It is sometimes possible to address issues like this by introducing local parking restrictions to make the best use of available space and to ensure the parking practices do not become a hazard to road users. These particular streets, as I'm sure you're aware, are already on the programme to be investigated in detail. If, following these investigations, it's considered that some form of parking restrictions are necessary, they will be subject of a formal proposal as part of the next parking review project later this financial year. So in this instance, I don't believe there's any necessity for me to meet with you on site. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you for that answer. I'm disappointed that you won't take up my offer of a meeting on site, as you said you were so keen to get around.
My time is limited, as you can appreciate.
As you said, you wanted to get around all the various problem areas in the district. Now, yes, I have been trying to pursue this problem for the best part of 3 years, and I look to you to help me solve it. I'm essentially talking to the same people as I have been for the past 3 years. I want officers to spend their time to look at this particular challenge. When I asked you the question about Station Road, you said it was going to be looked at sometime in the future. Now you're saying that the neighbouring roads, Heron Way and Mallard Way, are in the plan. When is that review planned for?
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Gaines.
I haven't got an exact date for that, I'm afraid. At the moment, not because it's not in the plan, but because I actually don't know the date. But we are at the moment looking at parking strategy going forward anyway. So I will find out for you and I will get back to you.
Good luck.
And I will come and see you at another time, Councillor Burke.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Question L will be written. So question M, Councillor Bowick, Councillor Gaines, please.
Thank you for a second question. This, as we in the Chamber can acknowledge, is a very sensitive site. The current budget allocation for the redevelopment of this site is part of the capital programme which was approved back in March this year. The current budget allocated to the redevelopment is part of the capital programme, which was approved back in March this year. Sorry, I've said that twice. I do beg your pardon. The costs budgeted are to reflect the estimates to deliver the project. Following cost appraisal exercises and review of it by an external quantity surveyor and taking account of all viable options alongside our statutory legal obligations, the most recent cost appraisal was in November 2022 as part of a bid to Capital Strategy Group. As a result of significant costs confirmed in November 2022, Council's responsibilities were initiated in December 2022. Sorry, I'm sorry it's such a long answer. This was to ensure that the current scheme was as cost effective as possible in light of the Council's legal obligations for this site. This review confirms current proposals were appropriate in order to meet all requirements necessary. As the project progresses, costs are being closely monitored by the appointed external quantity surveyor working with the Council's project officer. There has been one significant cost change since November, and that is the removal of Japanese knotweed confirmed as being present on site in April this year. The cost of redeveloping Four Houses Corner are significant. The Council has done everything it reasonably can to ensure proposals that are appropriate and for the benefit of the future residents of Four Houses Corner and the wider community. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you for that comprehensive response. And absolutely, I understand perfectly the council's duty of care towards the tenants of Four Houses Corner, and I support that approach. I noticed you don't mention the actual cost of the work, but you should know that one of your fellow councillors has put the budgetary costs in the public domain. So a lot of my residents are perfectly aware of the scale of the cost of this project. Indeed, it's in the papers, so anybody who's perceptive enough to read to find that out, it's there for them to look at. And I know perfectly well what that.
We can get to a supplementary.
Yes, I will do. I will do. Thank you. Thank you. I know perfectly well what the scale of the cost is, because as a member of the executive, I have seen the proposals that came forward in November 22. We said at that time that we wanted a justification for the scale of the expense, and I wonder whether you have had that justification yet, and whether you have challenged that in your duty of providing best value for the residents of West Berkshire Council.
Thank you, Councillor Bowick. Councillor Gaines.
As you're aware, that we have certain statutory responsibilities for our residents in West Berkshire, yes, and those include some of the travelling community as well. So the things we've looked at so far in that project, which you can come to any of the briefings that we have. I have briefings on a regular basis with Mr. Bagner. I only call him Bill, so it's on a regular basis. So you're quite welcome to turn up at those briefings. He gives us a day, almost a week by week appraisal of what's happening, when it's happening, and what the issues are. So I do feel that we are actually on top of those costs.
Thank you, Councillor Gaines. And Councillor Bowick, obviously the offer there to stay as up to date as you would wish on how that progresses as the ward, as a ward member.
Cost control.
Thank you. Yeah, and you
about cost control. I'm sure the costs have been controlled very well.
Thank you. We now move on to the final question of the evening, which is question O by Councillor McKinnon to Councillor Codlin, please.
Sorry, Leader, and sorry, Councillor Codling, for cutting you off. I guess this is a point of order, Leader. I've got another question on the published agenda that hasn't been answered yet.
Oh, okay. Can we do question O? Yeah. To deal with that one.
I'll just point that out before we wrap things up.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your question, councillor McKinnon. I can report that education officers have spoken with the school and had discussions about the fencing. And I understand a contractor has been out this week to price this up, and work should start very shortly.
Thank you very much for that answer, and I'm sure my resident will be pleased. My supplementary is, will you keep me updated, please?
Yes, I will.
And do you know what? I'm sorry I'm not asking you to come out and see this. If you want to come with Councillor Gaines, you'll be more than welcome. It's on the same place, so I didn't want you to feel left out.
Well, as my daughter's moving to Burfield, I'll be out there soon.
Fine choice.
I visited Burfield and Mortimer during the elections.
I know, you put a leaflet through my door.
More than happy to keep me on his doorstep for hours. So he was very hospitable to me. Only during campaigning for some reason. Yeah. And he offered to take all my leaflets for me, which is nice.
yeah, I'd have delivered them, no problem at all for you. That's
Councillor McKinnon, I did say when we started members' questions that question A has since been withdrawn. It was rejected by officers as a repeated question. So if you want to follow that up with the monitoring officer outside of the meeting, would be my suggestion for you.
Well, I will do, because it's on the published agenda, so I will do so.
Yeah, I think after it got publicised, I think well, as we know, the agenda can change throughout. But yeah, please take that up with the monitoring officer. Thanks. Okay, so that is all business concluded. Thank you everyone for your attendance, and nice to see you again, Tom. Thanks. Take care.
Bye all.